Chapter 973. Tang Jun and Shaluo Wondrous Tree returned safely from the ancient immortals world. Before they left, Xiao Zhen began her final closed-door training to break through to the primordial spirit realm. Although the results were still unknown, Tang Jun successfully met Xiao Zhen. According to Xiao Zhen, there was a high chance of success. Apart from that, Tang Jun also brought back other news. Zhen Er's father personally met with Tiansong and asked him to pass on this news. As Xiao Yan spoke, he couldn't help but look pleasantly surprised. The crack in the netherworld sea in the ancient immortals world is very likely related to the king of the underworld and his third disciple, Yu Ming. Xiao Yan wasn't happy about the news itself, but because Xiao Zhen's father asked Tang Jun to bring back the news. The news about the king of the underworld and Yu Ming could have been obtained by the aboriginals themselves, or it could have been from Taishu Temple. Xianmen Tianzong and the king of the underworld didn't have a good relationship. The aboriginals communicating with Xianmen Tianzong on this issue was undoubtedly a sign of goodwill. If the news came from Taishu Temple and the aboriginals conveyed the news, their goodwill would be even more obvious. Of course, it was only goodwill for now. Just as Lin Feng said, the aboriginals were still far from making a final decision. Lin Feng looked at the happy Xiao Yan and pointed at him. "Can you rest assured now?" Xiao Yan laughed. Suddenly, he thought of something and looked at Lin Feng. "Master, Zhen's father suspects that the king of the underworld will have his eyes on the aboriginal's seal of all living. Do you think we should?" The seal of all living was also a supreme treasure that the king of the underworld had used to rule over the world in ancient times. The seal of all living controlled life, and the king of the underworld used his brush to judge death. Together, they protected the king of the underworld, who stood high above the masses and controlled life, death, reincarnation, destiny, and destiny. Together, they nourished the book of life and death, laying a foundation for it. Unfortunately, before the book of life and death was completed, the king of the underworld was deposed and overthrown. The seal of all living beings was completely destroyed, leaving only fragments that fell into the hands of the ancient emperor who deposed the king of the underworld. The ancient sovereign lineage cultivated the primordial great Tao of longevity, and the all-beings seal played a significant role. Thus, this fragment had been preserved and passed down. Lin Feng said indifferently, "The king of the underworld is being watched by us and the Taishu Temple at the same time. He won't easily reveal his whereabouts. The seal of all living beings has already been destroyed, and it's only a fragment. It's not worth the risk for the king of the underworld." Since the aboriginals specifically mentioned this matter, they are actually hinting that they have something else in their hands that the king of the underworld covets. That thing, in addition to the seal of all living beings fragment, might make the king of the underworld take a risk out of desperation. He looked at Xiao Yan and said with a smile, "Cultivate in peace for a period of time, and also prepare well. If you miss this period of time, you can personally go to the ancient immortals realm and meet your in-laws as a silly son-in-law." "Don't worry, master. I've been waiting for this day for a long time." Xiao Yan was full of vigor. After Xiao Yan left, Lin Feng smiled and shook his head, then quietly thinking in his heart, compared to the mysterious sea, sea of refuge, sea of space, and sea of stars, these four seas, the nether sea is actually also very mysterious to the multitude of living beings in the boundless universe. Underground underworld ocean, underground underworld ocean. The third disciple of the king of the underworld, Taoist Yu Ming, who even his own junior brother, Su Anda, doesn't know about, could be hiding in there? Could the king of the underworld himself be hiding in there? Lin Feng thought to himself, the king of the underworld has really set up a lot of backup plans. Taoist reincarnation and Taoist Huang Quan have been eliminated, and Su Anda has rebelled. Under these circumstances, he actually left a way out for himself. Although his way of doing things is much more savage, this fellow is even more cunning than Golden Cicada. Lin Feng suddenly laughed. "I wonder if Taoist Yu Ming will also betray him? If that's the case, it'll be interesting." As he was thinking, Lin Feng suddenly thought of something and looked in the direction of He Luoju. "Oh, is Yuan Fong going to form his nascent soul?" Not only did Huang Zhenting, Han Yang, and other junior disciples gain a lot from this trip to infinite wilderness vastland, Li Yuanfang and Luo Qingwu also did the same. After returning to the mountain, they began to cultivate in seclusion. In the big house in the courtyard of He Luoju, Li Yuanfang sat cross-legged. A golden elixir flashing with purple light was already floating in the air above his head. The void above his body was distorting, and void tribulation thunder was faintly discernible, a sign that he was about to undergo the thunder tribulation to form his nascent soul. Lin Feng only took a glance and a smile appeared on his face. Everything that Li Yuanfang did had always been well planned, including things like undergoing the thunder tribulation. Since he dared to undergo the thunder tribulation now, it meant that he was almost 100% confident. Reality also proved that Li Yuanfang's thunder tribulation was indeed not dangerous, and it was almost like he was walking on flat ground. One complicated array after another turned into small light circles, protecting Li Yuanfang's golden elixir and helping him endure the void tribulation thunder. When the thunder tribulation finally subsided, the golden elixir cracked and emitted a bright light. In the light, a baby sat cross-legged, but it was exactly the same as Li Yuanfang's childhood. It was his Yuanying. The commotion at He Luoju naturally alarmed the others on Jade Capital Mountain. Apart from Luo Qingwu, who was also in seclusion and unaware of the outside world, treasure lights shot up into the sky from Fenshan Cliff, Qiantian Palace, Mortal Forest Residence, Snow Wind Valley, Nirvana Grotto Heaven, and Desolate Heaven Valley. Congratulations, sixth junior brother, for forming your nascent soul in the void and achieving the Yuanying realm. Congratulations, sixth senior brother, for forming your nascent soul in the void and achieving the Yuanying realm. After a while, a group of true disciples on Jade Capital Mountain also came out of their residences, including Han Yang of the Light Dance Pavilion. They all bowed in the direction of He Luoju. Congratulations, sixth martial uncle, for forming your nascent soul in the void. The disciples of He Luoju were even more elated and joyful. They all bowed in the direction of the house where Li Yuanfang was. Li Yuanfang withdrew his Yuanying body and left the big house. He flew into the air and bowed solemnly in the direction of Fenshan Cliff and the other cave residences. Then he stepped on the void and walked towards Lin Feng. He bowed on the ground. Disciple greets master. A system notification sounded next to Lin Feng's ears. Congratulations, host's direct disciple, Li Yuanfang, for forming his Yuanying realm within 50 years. The number of disciples under the host who have formed their nascent soul within 50 years has now increased to 6. He held up Li Yuanfang in the air and smiled. Great ancestor, he too can rest in peace now. Li Yuanfang's lips moved. He bowed towards Lin Feng again. Then he turned towards the north and bowed 3 times. Then he bowed 3 times towards Lin Feng. He stood up and looked at Lin Feng. He was a little emotional. Master? Lin Feng smiled and waved his hand. What you have today is the result of your own hard work. I'm very comforted, very comforted. He tapped his finger lightly. A dark green stream of light flashed in the air. It was like a green ray of sunlight. It was almost undetectable under the sunlight. It was the heavenly blue light needle that was collected from the eastern heavenly gate. It had been completely subdued by Lin Feng and became obedient. Apart from that, there was also a rusty ancient brass bell that appeared beside the heavenly blue light needle. It exuded a power that could suppress everything and freeze everything. It had an extremely strong suppression effect on the spirit. It froze one's spirit, causing one to be unable to think, or move. It was the soul-suppressing bell, a treasure that Xianmen Tianzong had collected from the underworld hall. It had also been subdued by Lin Feng. Lin Feng said, Yuanfang, you've cultivated the 4 symbols heaven-opening scripture and obtained the River Luo heavenly gate formation. With that as a foundation, you've comprehended the yin and yang life and death formation, opened the eastern heavenly gate and obtained the light dust formation. You've comprehended the Yingzhou immortal mountains nameless ancient formation and opened the western heavenly gate and obtained the Black Sea immortal trap formation. Your light dust formation is mainly used to combine other formations, and the Black Sea Immortal Trap Formation is your main formation divine power to subdue enemies. It can also be combined with the 9 Heavenly Gale Formation. Therefore, the treasures that I've prepared for you are the Heavenly Blue Light Needle and the Soul Suppressing Bell. Choose one of them. The Black Sea Immortal Trap Formation was a formation that Li Yuanfang had comprehended by combining it with the 4 symbols heaven-opening scripture during the process of comprehending the Yingzhou Immortal Mountains Nameless Ancient Formation. When the Yingzhou Immortal Mountains Nameless Ancient Formation was at its peak, not only would it deprive the people who entered the formation of their senses, but it would also deprive the people who entered the formation of their consciousness. The enemies who fell into the formation were almost equivalent to living dead. Li Yuanfang's Black Sea Immortal Trap Formation was born from this and had a similar effect, but its power level was affected by Li Yuanfang's own dermic powers. Even if an expert were to enter the formation and not be deprived of their consciousness, their perception would definitely be greatly affected. At this time, if the sinister and mysterious heavenly jade light needles were to hide in the formation, it would truly be too easy to kill. As for the soul-suppressing bell, it was combined with the Black Sea Immortal Trap Formation, strengthening each other and maximizing the effect of suppressing and trapping enemies. However, in this way, although it was a strong combination, the ability to control the situation would be greatly strengthened, but the lethality would inevitably be weaker. According to the Underworld Hall's tradition, the soul-suppressing bell was often used together with the sharp soul-shocking bell. However, it did not matter even if Li Yuanfang chose the soul-suppressing bell, because the Southern Heavenly Gate Formation that he was going to open next for the River and Luo Heavenly Gates Formation was the Heavenly Punishment Sword Formation, which was a super-killing formation that was above the Yin and Yang Life and Death Formation in terms of pure offensive power. Therefore, these 2 magic treasures, no matter which one it was, were very suitable for Li Yuanfang. After taking a look at the Heavenly Blue Light Needle and the Soul-Suppressing Bell, Li Yuanfang bowed to Lin Feng. Master, disciple chooses the Soul-Suppressing Bell. Lin Feng nodded and put away the Heavenly Blue Light Needle. Then, he handed the Soul-Suppressing Bell to Li Yuanfang. After giving him some guidance on the Tao, he let Li Yuanfang return to his cave abode to focus on nurturing Yuaning. Not long after Li Yuanfang, Huang Jinting successfully formed his gold core. The second generation of Heaven Desolate Valley finally welcomed the first disciple who formed the golden elixir, which made Shi Tianhao very happy. However, the Tao name that Shi Tianhao prepared for Goldie made Lin Feng quite speechless. Heavenly Thunder. The others only felt that it was a little too straightforward, but they also felt that it was quite imposing. It was also very compatible with the Tao and divine arts of Heaven Desolate Valley. Goldie also liked it very much, but it made Lin Feng very angry. For a moment, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Not long after, good news came from the Qingwu Pavilion. However, it wasn't Luo Qingwu who was in seclusion, but her disciple Han Yang. As a second-generation direct disciple who joined the sect later, Han Yang displayed shocking potential similar to Tang Jun and became the 10th second-generation direct disciple to form his gold core. However, his master still hadn't come out of seclusion, so his Tao name had to wait. As for Luo Qingwu's seclusion this time, it wasn't short. However, Lin Feng wasn't in a hurry. Instead, he was rather looking forward to it. A 9-point bone frame is still not very stable. Chapter 974. Lin Feng's Taoist scripture was very difficult to cultivate, and it had high requirements for the cultivator's aptitude. Wang Lin was the best example. Before his root bone was repaired, it was still difficult for him to cultivate, even with full comprehension and willpower. However, if the cultivation was successful, the achievements of the disciples would be enough to amaze the world. If the foundation establishment disciples were successful in their cultivation, they would definitely be able to build a first-grade spirit platform and condense a first-grade pill cauldron. In the future, they would form a golden elixir and a purple core. This news had not spread yet, otherwise, the entire divine land would be in an uproar. However, although it was 100% possible to build a first-grade spirit platform, it was not so easy to build a supreme spirit platform. With Lin Feng's current resources and conditions to cultivate disciples with 9 points of root bone potential, it still depended on luck. Little Lin Tong, who had turned into a human body, and Zhou Yunsong, who had the burning sun physique, both had 9 points of root bone, but in the end, they were not able to build a supreme spirit platform, which made Xiao Yan and Yang Qing feel quite regretful. Lin Feng was also quite regretful, but it was not all bad news. There was also good news. It was that Luo Qingwu, who also had 9 points of root bone potential, and Tang Jun, the second-generation direct disciple under Xiao Yan and Fen Tianya, had successfully built a supreme spirit platform and condensed a supreme pill cauldron. When he formed his core, his purple core gave birth to a strange phenomenon. The two of them had almost perfect foundations in the early stages of cultivation. At the same time, as long as they successfully formed their nascent souls, they would be able to produce the divine light of creation. Tang Jun was still far from forming his nascent soul, but Luo Qingwu was right in front of him. Lin Feng was looking forward to seeing what kind of divine light of creation his little female disciple would produce. Every ray of divine light of creation contained a different concept of power and its use. It was unique. Only when a certain ray of divine light of creation completely disappeared from this world could the next ray of divine light of the same concept reappear in a distant or nearby period of time. However, because the divine light of creation was too rare, even with the long history of the heaven primal world, there were very few occurrences. For example, right now, Lin Feng's Shenmen Tianzong could be said to be gathering together at an unprecedented density. It could be foreseen that when Tang Jun also formed his nascent soul, the situation would be made known to outsiders, and it would definitely cause another wave. As expected, when the Void Thunder Tribulation covered the Light Dance Pavilion, apart from the overwhelming sword intent that shot up to the sky to fight against the Tribulation Thunder, there was also a black light that was faintly discernible. The purple-clothed girl directly left her cave abode and sat cross-legged on the roof of the pavilion with the profound, clear sword laid flat on her knees. A strange pill floated in midair above her head. It was completely jet black, translucent and resplendent like an ice crystal, and emitted rolling purple light. Slowly, a quiet black light flowed in the black ice crystal-like pill. It was not dazzling nor eye-catching, but it was frightening. After the thunder tribulation, the elixir cracked open and shone brightly. A small baby girl appeared from within, which was exactly Luo Qingwu's appearance when she was a baby. A black ribbon-like divine light of creation circled and danced around her nascent soul. Seeing this, Lin Feng immediately laughed. He didn't say anything more. A beam of black and white divine light shot into the sky, shaking the universe and the universe. At the same time, two rainbow-like divine lights of creation also soared into the sky from the desolate sky valley. They were Shi Tianhao's divine light of origin and divine light of end. Affected by the divine light of creation from her master and senior brother, Luo Qingwu let out a long and clear cry, like the cry of a phoenix. The black light ribbon that wrapped around her yuaning also turned into a black light pillar that covered her whole body, piercing through the heaven and earth. From Fen Tian Cliff, Qian Tian Palace, Fan Lin Residence, Snow Wind Valley, Nirvana Wonderland, Heluo Residence, and Desolate Sky Valley came laughter at the same time. Congratulations, junior sister, for forming your nascent soul in the Void Realm and achieving the Yuaning Realm. You even obtained the divine light of creation and achieved a rare feat. A group of second-generation true disciples also came out of their residences and bowed in the direction of the Light Dance Pavilion. Congratulations, junior aunt, for forming your nascent soul in the Void Realm. Han Yang stood outside the Light Dance Pavilion and looked at the young girl on top of the pavilion. He didn't have the slightest bit of arrogance or slyness. Slowly, he bowed and said, "Congratulations, master." Lin Feng and Shi Tianhao withdrew their divine light of creation, and Luo Qingwu also withdrew the pure black light pillar. Yuanying fell back into her physical body and flew into the air. She bowed to the cave residences around her. "Thank you, senior brothers, for your love and help." She turned into a stream of light and landed in front of Lin Feng. She bowed on the ground. "Thanks to Master's guidance and love, little Wu can become who she is today." A system notification sounded next to Lin Feng's ears. Congratulations to host's direct disciple, Luo Qingwu, for forming Yuanying within 50 years. The number of disciples under host who have formed their nascent soul within 50 years has now increased to 7. At this point, all of Lin Feng's direct disciples had formed their nascent souls. When the news spread to the outside world, all the forces that were on friendly terms with Xianmen Tianzong came to congratulate them. Let's not talk about this later. At this moment, Lin Feng was also quite happy. All the elites in the sect had become talents. This made Lin Feng feel quite relieved. He held Luo Qingwu up in the air. His gaze moved from Luo Qingwu to the 8 cave residences around him, including Fenshan Cliff and Qiantian Palace. He looked at the entire Yujing Mountain. He looked at the Cloud Peak, Mirror Lake, and Cloud Mirror City at the foot of the mountain. He looked at the distance and looked at the Xiantian realm through the layers of void. After looking around, Lin Feng smiled faintly. It's finally starting to look a little like this. After the joy, a second thought suddenly appeared in Lin Feng's mind. What a sly system. Including little Lin, there should be 8. Now there are only 7. No matter how I think about it, it feels very awkward. He shook his head and couldn't help but smile at his own thoughts. He chased these messy thoughts out of his mind and his gaze fell on his youngest disciple again. Xiao Wu, congratulations. Luo Qingwu's eyes were slightly red. It's all thanks to Master's nurturing and teaching. It was this person in front of her who was looking at her with a gentle smile. He had saved her from the state of falling from the clouds when the heaven-accumulating dark spirit bead was broken. He had single-handedly helped her return to the clouds and even climbed to a peak that was much higher than she had originally expected. He had single-handedly made her who she was now. It was a real grace of rebirth. Lin Feng shook his head with a smile. Master leads the way, but cultivation depends on oneself. You can't get to where you are today without your own efforts. Master has given you pointers, but if it's hard to carve rotten wood, it'll only be a waste of effort in the end. He said this with emotion. The little Lolita back then had now grown into a slender and elegant young lady. She had grown not only in height and weight. Her laziness and fragility in the past now almost only existed in his memory. Lin Feng smiled slightly. Well, you're already a young lady and an old ancestor of the Yuanying period. You're awe-inspiring when you go out. Many people have to salute you. Even your own disciple is a spiritual master of the golden elixir period. Don't tell me you still want to show off in front of me? Luo Qingwu smiled and sniffed. It was only in front of Lin Feng that she couldn't control her state of mind. It was as if she was still a child who had just entered the sect. Lin Feng smiled. His finger pointed in the air, and a shadow flashed. It was emerald green, but it was a bamboo-like walking stick. Luo Qingwu looked carefully and saw that the bamboo stick was divided into 7 sections, which contained a rather mysterious and powerful concept of power. Moreover, Luo Qingwu very keenly discovered that there seemed to be flames flickering and jumping on the surface of the bamboo stick. With her divine sense, she could feel that there was a vast amount of fire elephant essence in the bamboo stick. Bamboo and wood were born with raging fire. While it was contradictory and strange, there was also a concept of reason in it. Naturally, Luo Qingwu could also clearly feel that there was a vague but real will in the bamboo stick. It made the bamboo stick seem like a real independent life. It was a magic treasure. Lin Feng smiled slightly. This treasure was called the 7 Treasures Bamboo Fire Staff. He had obtained a few magic treasures after trampling on the reincarnation sect's celestial path. It wasn't very suitable for his own family, so he took these magic treasures to the exchange system to exchange for this 7 Treasures Bamboo Fire Staff. It was quite expensive. It took more than 1 spirit nurturing level magic treasure to exchange for this 7 Treasures Bamboo Fire Staff. But it was indeed worth the money. Master will reward each of you with a magic treasure when you reach nascent soul. This 7 Treasures Bamboo Fire Staff is for you, Xiao Wu. Lin Feng said, the magic treasure itself has its own power. It's very extraordinary. Apart from that, it's suitable for you. Luo Qingwu's heart moved slightly. She took the 7 Treasures Bamboo Fire Staff and carefully studied it. She nodded repeatedly. "Thank you, master. With this treasure, whether it's cultivating the 7-flame heaven-raising sword or using it after mastering it, it will be greatly beneficial." Luo Qingwu cultivated the 4 symbols heaven-opening book and obtained the 4 symbols immortal beheading sword. Apart from the 9 mysterious wind formless sword, there were 3 other swords. She was born with a pure yin body. Cultivating Daoan methods was often twice the result with half the effort. However, it was also because of her own talent that it was easy for her to practice other sword techniques. However, Luo Qingwu was a little embarrassed when it came to the 7 flames heaven-raising sword of the 7 heavenly blades. She had comprehended and figured out this sword technique by herself, but it was quite difficult to practice it. Now that she obtained the 7 treasures bamboo fire staff, the problem was easily solved. It also made cultivating the 7-flame heaven-raising sword a lot easier. In the future, when she used this sword, it would be even more powerful. Lin Feng nodded with a smile. Although he didn't personally refine it, he was always very particular about the magic treasures and tools he gave to his disciples. He did his best to suit his disciples' actual needs. He either made up for their shortcomings or continued to strengthen their strengths. Luo Qingwu returned to the light dance pavilion to refine the magic treasures and nourish her yuaning. Lin Feng also continued to focus his attention on the White Tiger Great Sage and the Star Ocean Portal. At the same time, Lin Feng's attention was also on the Infinite Wasteland Vastland, the King of the Underworld, the Taishu Temple, the Ancient Immortals World, and other forces. The Taishu Temple suddenly visited the Ancient Immortals World. According to the information obtained from the ancient race, the crack of the Netherworld Sea in the Ancient Immortals World was related to the King of the Underworld. Connecting the two, it was not difficult for Lin Feng to deduce that the Taishu Temple's visit to the Ancient Immortals World was related to the King of the Underworld. There was something that the King of the Underworld wanted in the Ancient Immortals World. The Taishu Temple most likely wanted to use it as bait to lure and kill the King of the Underworld. However, it was unknown whether the King of the Underworld realized this, or whether the Ancient Immortals World had something that he wanted was not enough for him to take the risk. A long time passed, but the King of the Underworld did not make any moves. Or maybe he is planning something, and is planning to make a move only after he has made up his mind? Lin Feng pondered. Chapter 975. Perhaps it was because the news of people from the Void Temple paying a visit to the ancient world of immortals raised the Underworld Emperor's vigilance, or perhaps it was because of some other reason, but after a long period of time, the Underworld Emperor still continued to hide, not revealing his whereabouts. Taishu Temple initially sent troops into the Purple Mist Sea to explore the entrance of the Xian Sea. After receiving the news of Tenryu Zhen's mid-tribulation, they immediately retreated and did not make any other moves. Since they did not intend to enter the Xian Sea, there was no need for them to continue occupying the Purple Mist Sea. After Taishu Temple retreated, the Purple Sea Dragon King and his Sea Dragon clan returned to the Xian Sea, and the other demons did not intend to block the entrance. The situation in the Divine Land and Infinite Mainland calmed down for a while, but there were still undercurrents that could erupt at any time. On the Infinite Mainland side, although the Dragon Clan did not come out of the Xian Sea, the news of Tenryu Zhen's successful mid-tribulation still made the other demons feel pressured, and they all sought to improve their strength and influence. Facing the pressure from both the humans and the Dragon Clan, the other demons were still rather restrained and did not make any big moves. However, they were constantly plotting and fighting in private. On the Divine Land side, Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple, which were the absolute protagonists in the past and also the two poles of the human forces, became much more low-key. The Mount Shu Sword sect even guarded their mountain gates tightly, almost avoiding the world. The main theme of the Divine Land for the next few years became the conflict between the Great Qin Dynasty and the Great Zhou Dynasty. Previously, the Great Qin Dynasty was restrained by the Mount Shu Sword sect and the other major sects, and it was also not peaceful internally. On the other hand, the Great Zhou Dynasty rose rapidly and became a powerful force that surpassed the Great Qin Dynasty. However, after the Battle of the Yinghai Sea and the Battle of Xian Extermination, the wind direction changed. The great Zhou dynasty's rising momentum stopped, and it even showed signs of declining. On the other hand, the great Qin dynasty was revitalized, and the strategic situation between the two dynasties was reversed again. Since the Battle of Xian extermination, the great Zhou dynasty had to adopt a strategic defense strategy and bide their time. On the other hand, the great Qin Empire started to suppress the great Zhou Empire. Both sides maintained their rationality and restraint. Even though there were constant conflicts, there were no signs of it growing. The great Qin Empire had made some gains, but the great Zhou Empire was still able to hold its ground. On the other hand, Xianmen Tianzong had once again entered a period of rapid development. Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the others were either teaching disciples on the mountain or traveling around the world. The reputation of the sect as a holy land had been thoroughly established. Lin Feng himself remained on Jade Capital Mountain. On the one hand, he cultivated and refined his Tao, and on the other hand, he worked with White Tiger Great Sage to separate the portal from his body. It was a time-consuming task without killing White Tiger Great Sage. Even if White Tiger Great Sage cooperated with him, it would still take a long time. However, Lin Feng was very patient. Obtaining a stable path into the desolate ancient star ocean was very beneficial. Forget about the other benefits, just the possibility of harvesting the Star River Purple Zoisha pill was extremely important. It was the only resource that the Celestial Sect of Wonders was extremely scarce among the many materials needed to refine the 33 Heavens Fortune Immortal Pill. After a long time of hard work, Lin Feng finally separated the portal from White Tiger Great Sage's true form. Although he was very interested in the desolate ancient star ocean, he had enough time and there was nothing urgent. Therefore, Lin Feng did not immediately open the portal and enter. Instead, he carefully studied it for a while. Through this portal, Lin Feng's understanding of the desolate ancient star ocean deepened. At the same time, while bathing in the starlight and observing the star ocean, Lin Feng also had a new understanding of his Tao and divine powers. A brand new divine powers and Dharma spells gradually took shape in his mind. However, it was only a simple framework. To completely complete it, he still needed time to polish and study. Separating the portal from White Tiger Great Sage's body and studying the desolate ancient star ocean required a lot of time and effort. During this process, 5 years had passed in the vast thousand worlds. In these 5 years, the divine land and infinite wasteland were both turbulent. Although there were no big waves, the atmosphere of a storm was getting stronger and stronger. Only, the Emperor of the Underworld never showed himself again. Apart from the younger generation disciples of the Void Temple who came out to the world, the upper-level senior cultivators seemed to have once again entered a state of seclusion, rarely coming out from White Cloud Mountain. The ancient immortal world also returned to peace. 5 years had passed. The appearance of the crack in the Nether Sea and the chaos in the ancient world gradually became a memory. Xiao Zhen'er, who had obtained the 33 days fortune elixir, quickly reached the Essence Soul stage. However, she quickly went into seclusion again to undergo the trial and had not come out until now. When Xiao Zhen'er reached the Essence Soul stage, Xiao Yan officially visited the ancient immortal world. On one hand, he represented Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong to communicate with the ancient race. On the other hand, he also congratulated Xiao Zhen'er. After the visit, he returned to the divine land. The good news was that Xiao Zhen'er's family now had a good impression of Xiao Yan. Lin Feng already had the intention to visit the ancient immortal world personally after Xiao Zhen'er finished her trial and came out of seclusion again to propose a marriage for Xiao Yan. Perhaps the ancient race might not agree to it immediately out of consideration for choosing sides. But even if they could not get married in a short time, they should get engaged first. After informing the disciples of this idea, the apprentice brothers and sisters couldn't help but make fun of their eldest apprentice brother again. Xiao Yan, on the other hand, was laughing happily there. After coming down, he worked even harder to train himself. From the inside of the Celestial Sect of Wonders, the second period of rapid development had arrived. Whether it was the foundation of the sect or the cultivation of the disciples of the younger generation, after the accumulation of time, they all had a strong foundation and a tendency to soar into the sky. 5 years ago, after Luo Qingwu successfully formed her nascent soul, Han Yang, who had formed his core first, waited for his master to come out of seclusion. Then he immediately had a Taoist name. The Taoist name that Luo Qingwu prepared for him was Dubhe, which originated from the first star of the Big Dipper, Dubhe. The Big Dipper was Dubhe, Merak, Phecda, Megrez, Alioth, Mizar, and Alkaid. Luo Qingwu's idea was to accept her own direct disciples and strive for excellence, just like her master, Lin Feng, who only accepted 8 people. The first 4 people who successfully formed their core were named Dubhe, Merak, Phecda, and Megrez, while the last 4 were named after the first 4 stars of the Southern Dipper, namely Tianfu, Tianliang, Tianji, and Tiantong. Not long after Han Yang formed his core 5 years ago, many second-generation direct disciples also formed their core one after another. The head disciple of the Qian Tian Palace, Yang Tai, successfully formed his core and was bestowed the Taoist name Tian Tai by Zhu. Just like Su Yunxing's Tianxi and Ying Luo's Tianbi, it was also based on Zhu Yi's own interpretation of the Tao of Yi. The Tai hexagram, Kuan and Qian, was the top of the earth and the bottom of the sky. It was the intersection of heaven and earth, and all living things were connected, the intersection of the upper and lower, and their aspirations were the same. The inner yang and the outer yin, the inner strong and the outer docile, the inner gentleman and the outer villain. The gentleman's Tao was long, and the small one's Tao was long. The Snow Wind Valley's head disciple, Zhao Huan, formed his core and was bestowed the Taoist name Tianjing by Yu Hongyan. The little medicine boy, whose life and death were uncertain in the past, had now truly grown into a steady and experienced talent. He successfully formed his golden elixir and even formed his purple core. His future was promising. Back then, when he was refined into a human elemental pill, other cultivators who obtained his void core could only form a yellow core. That miserable past almost cut off Xiao Huan's path to progress. Fortunately, he had received the careful guidance of Yu Hongyan and Xianmen Tianzong all these years. Only then did he have hope again. Back then, during the Kunlun Mountains Dharma Assembly, his cultivation was only in the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm. However, that was to lay a good foundation and pave the way for future cultivation. Just like Zhou Yunsong when he was in the foundation establishment realm, he deliberately slowed down his progress. Otherwise, he would have been in the late stage of the foundation establishment realm at that time. However, from the looks of it now, his previous efforts were not in vain. Step by step, Zhao Huan stabilized his path and finally succeeded in breaking free from all the shackles of the past, successfully forming his core without leaving any future troubles. After the trip to Infinite Wasteland, the head disciple of He Luo Ju, Tan Yunqing, also cultivated in seclusion and successfully formed his golden elixir. Li Yuanfang bestowed him the Taoist name Tianfeng. Zhuge Wanqiu also successfully formed her core, which made her father, Zhuge Zhan, extremely happy. After discussing with Shi Tianhao for a long time, they finally decided on the Taoist name Tianhong. In the following days, there were also second-generation foundation establishment disciples who succeeded in forming their core. At the same time, third-generation foundation establishment disciples also gradually began to grow. In these 5 years, there were new disciples who entered the sect one after another. They passed the entrance examination to become foundation disciples, and then passed the examination to become core disciples. The threshold to enter Xianmen Tianzong was not low to begin with. Those who could become core disciples were the best in the entire divine land. After the most outstanding group of people emerged one after another, with the accumulation and tempering of time, the large group of people behind them gradually caught up. With the accumulation, the cultivators of Xianmen Tianzong in the Golden Elixir period ushered in a huge blowout. Today, 5 years after the Xian extermination battle, the number of Xianmen Tianzong disciples in the Golden Elixir period had already exceeded 70. Nowadays, the responsibility of the daily operations of the sect was mostly borne by the younger disciples. There were also more and more Xianmen Tianzong disciples who began to travel around the world. Although they did not cause much of a stir, their influence was increasing day by day. Because of the relatively high threshold to accept disciples, there were less than 1,000 disciples in Xianmen Tianzong. However, the cultivators in the Golden Elixir period had already exceeded 10% of the total number. This ratio was very rare in the entire Divine Land. Lin Feng looked at the flourishing sect and felt happy. As for the main mission, the number of disciples in the Golden Elixir period exceeded 10% of the total number, and the number of disciples in the Foundation establishment stage was more than half. There was nothing to worry about these two requirements. What he was concerned about now was that the number of disciples in the Yuanying period had reached 1% of the total number. According to the lower limit of the total number of people, he needed at least 10. And in these 5 years, Dao Yuding and Little Lin Tong had successfully formed their nascent souls. Their cultivation time, including the time spent in the accelerated time grotto heaven, was also less than 50 years, which completely met the requirements. What was even more exciting was that Zhou Yunsong, Tang Jun, Ying Lizha, Han Yang, Huang Zhenting, and Yang Tai had all reached the late stage of the Golden Elixir period, and there was hope for them to form their nascent souls. Under such circumstances, Lin Feng was naturally not in a hurry. Instead, he began to ponder over the system mission again, and a new idea came to his mind. Chapter 976. The total number of disciples in the past generations was more than 1,000. The proportion of disciples in the Yuanying period was 1%, the proportion of disciples in the Golden Elixir period was more than 10%, and the proportion of disciples in the Foundation establishment period was more than 39%. The time limit was 50 years. Every disciple's cultivation time was based on 50 years of accumulated cultivation. After 50 years of accumulation, even if they managed to reach the primordial divinity stage within a year, it would not be counted. At the same time, if Lin Feng's own time passed 50 years, the time limit would be announced. From the current point of view, there was basically no difficulty for Lin Feng to complete the current main quest. Because of his deliberate control, the amount of time that Lin Feng himself had spent in the mysterious Heaven-Time Light Grotto Heaven was limited. There was still a certain distance from the time limit of 50 years that he had set for himself. As for Zhou Yunsong and the others, there was also quite a distance from the time limit of 50 years. Unless they were collectively stuck at the bottleneck of the Void Thunder Tribulation, or all of them failed to pass the Thunder Tribulation and were struck to ashes. But this possibility was very small, so small that it was almost negligible. Among them, Zhou Yunsong was once again dragged down by his own burning yang body. After the Yin Fire Tribulation, he needed to be careful in the face of the Void Thunder Tribulation. If he was not careful, the thunder and fire would intersect, and the result would be internal and external troubles. Although Huang Zhenting and Yang Tai had just passed the Yin Wind Tribulation, there was still a long way to go before the 50 years time limit. According to the potential and strength they had shown before, there was enough time. What's more, Lu Xiaofeng and Li Xingfei had been promoted to the Middle Golden Elixir for a long time and were temporarily in a bottleneck period. After breaking through the bottleneck, there was immediately hope to pass the Yin Wind Tribulation. Tan Yunqing, Zhuge Wanqiu, Zhao Huan, Sun Shuer, Ke Jing, and Yen Wei had also reached the Middle Golden Elixir realm, and there was still potential to be tapped. Even among the disciples who entered late, some began to catch up, and some of the third-generation disciples gradually began to stand out. From a probability point of view, the most likely situation to make Lin Feng fail the main task was that Lin Feng himself entered a time cave and exceeded the 50 years time limit. Otherwise, completing the main task was already a sure thing. In this case, Lin Feng could not help but start to think about another problem, and that was the reward of the main quest. All along, the rewards from the system's main storyline quests had always been very impressive. However, until the main storyline quests were completed and the rewards were in their hands, there was no way to know what the rewards were. However, in the previous main quests, there were rewards for completing them, while the punishment for failing to complete them was extremely heavy. Until this main quest became only a reward and no punishment. The result of failing the main quest was the loss of the reward. At the same time, Lin Feng carefully pondered over the current main quest and found that the conditions were flexible. There were more than 1,000 disciples in the sect, and the number of successors of each realm was a percentage. Therefore, strictly speaking, the requirements of this mission only had a lower limit and no upper limit. Then the question was, according to the lower limit, would the rewards be the same for completing the mission just right and exceeding the lower limit be the same? This was a question that Lin Feng had been thinking about recently. Of course, this question could not be effectively verified. However, Lin Feng speculated that the rewards would be different depending on the completion of the mission. It was true that the system was very sly and deceptive, but most of the time, it would deceive you in the open and would not deliberately play tricks on people. For example, if Wang Lin exceeded the time limit and was not included in the list of people who formed their nascent soul within 50 years, the system would give a clear judgment immediately. It would not deliberately pretend to be confused, and it would not wait until the end of the mission to act shamelessly. In other words, the system was sly and strict, deceptive and scoundrel, but basically, it still played its cards according to the rules. Then, according to the side quest of the Saraira, the more Saraira returned each time, the better the side reward would be. From this, it could be seen that this kind of mission that did not have a strict completion standard would most likely involve the degree of completion and the completion of the results. Then, it would be judged according to this, and the mission reward would be calculated. Of course, the calculation standard was still unknown. For example, the current main quest was very difficult to judge. Generally speaking, there were two possibilities. First, it would be judged according to the number of people. In other words, as long as the required proportion of disciples in each realm was ensured, then the more people in each realm, the better. In other words, the number of disciples in the Yuanying realm was required to be 1%, and the total number of disciples in the Yuanying realm was required to be 20 people, which was double the minimum standard. Second, it would be judged according to the percentage. In other words, the percentage of disciples in the Yuanying realm, Golden Elixir realm, and Foundation Establishment realm should be increased as much as possible. The higher the percentage, the better. For example, the minimum number of disciples should be maintained at just over 1,000. Then, from them, 20 Yuanying realm cultivators and 200 Golden Elixir realm cultivators would be trained, and the rest would all be Foundation Establishment realm. Then, the proportion of the total number of disciples in the Yuanying realm would be 2%, the Golden Elixir realm would be 20%, and the rest of the Foundation Establishment realm would be calculated according to the percentage, which was double the minimum. Of course, the above was just an example. It was not necessary to exceed the number of disciples in all three realms. If one of the realms exceeded the quota, the final calculation result would be different, and the main quest reward might be different. Moreover, it was very likely that only the difference in the number of disciples in one realm would affect the final judgment. For example, if the Golden Elixir realm and Foundation Establishment realm reached the standard, only the number of disciples in the Yuanying realm would have an impact. But what kind of standard will be used to judge this? Lin Feng is still a bit unsure. According to the former judgment standard, completing the mission would consume more resources because the base number would increase massively. According to the latter judgment standard, it would be relatively more difficult. After all, in the case of a limited base number, it would undoubtedly be much more difficult to cultivate more top talents, and the resources consumed would also be a lot. At this time, the system had always been a scammer. Therefore, Lin Feng speculated that the latter was more likely. Although he did not know what the main quest reward was, Lin Feng definitely hoped that the reward would be as high as possible. In particular, he was interested in something. This thing could not be found in the exchange system and other places. He only learned about its existence from the description of another item. That was the strengthened version of the Heaven Interception Seal, the Heaven Interception Seal. Lin Feng almost rummaged through the system, but he could not find this thing, so he turned his attention to the special reward of the main quest. Of course, he was not sure if the special reward of the main quest would give this thing, or what kind of standard would be needed to get it, but in the absence of other ways, it did not prevent him from thinking about it. With the above conjecture, Lin Feng began to seriously ponder how to complete the current main quest with a higher standard. There was no doubt that among the several quest standards, the most difficult one was to form the nascent soul within 50 years. Lin Feng counted the cards in his hand. The situation was still very optimistic, but it could not be underestimated. Accidents were always everywhere. The simplest example was Zhou Yun-song, one of the strongest in actual combat among the second-generation disciples in the same realm. If the young man could not overcome the existing problems, it was normal for him to be stuck at the peak of the late stage of the golden elixir for decades. Of course, except for a few people, Lin Feng did not need to worry about the cultivation of the second-generation disciples. Xiao Yan and others were very attentive to their respective disciples, and they all knew the principle of teaching in accordance with the aptitude and local conditions. Lin Feng considered the problem from a higher level from the overall perspective of the sect, to further expand resources, improve strength, and optimize conditions for the sect. Hard work for so many years was not in vain. Nowadays, the hardware and software conditions of Xianmen Tianzong were changing with each passing day. It was much better than in the past. The later the disciple entered the sect, the better the treatment, and the better the conditions at the starting stage. Of course, while the environment was constantly improving, Lin Feng, Xiao Yan, and others were also stricter requirements and tempering the younger disciples to ensure that they would not be unaware of the blessings. From the looks of it, everyone's desire to improve was still very strong. What Lin Feng needed to do now was to further improve the foundation of the sect in all aspects, so that the good seedlings with potential could be further promoted. The Star Sea Gate in his hand was a very good opportunity. Lin Feng raised his palm, and a white ball of light floated in the air. The light spread out and turned into a white jade-like door. The door opened to both sides. Through the door, Lin Feng could see a bright and vast galaxy appearing in front of him. At the same time, in the white cloud mountain that was shrouded in thick clouds, a mirror light flashed. Another Star Sea Gate has opened. Lord Tai and Shoichi Daishin appeared at the top of White Cloud Mountain at the same time. Shoichi Daishin turned his head and asked, "Senior brother Tai, can you determine its location?" Lord Tai shook his head. In the current situation, if there are no more clues, the Haotian mirror can only detect the opening of the Star Sea Gate. It can't determine its specific location, nor can it determine who is in control of the Star Sea Gate. He closed his eyes, and his expression suddenly changed slightly. Shoichi Daishin also looked at him. "Senior brother, have the Star Sea Gates that were opened before closed? How many Star Sea Gates have opened at the same time?" Slowly, Lord Tai said, "For have opened before, and none of them have closed. This is the fifth. With 4 Star Sea Gates, we can open the Star Tomb." Shoichi Daishin said silently, "Although these Star Sea Gates are in the hands of different demon clans, it's hard to say if they will join forces against the Star Tomb. The more people that enter, the more choices there are, and the higher the possibility of them joining forces. It's just that in the past thousands of years, there have only been 4 Star Sea Gates that have opened at the same time, and only once. This is the first time that 5 Star Sea Gates have opened at the same time, but I wonder who is in control of them?" Lord Tai seemed to know what Shoichi Daishin was thinking. He pondered and said, "We only have one chance to enter the Star Sea. There are restrictions on the number of people and cultivation levels that can enter. At most, one of the 4 of us can go. In a situation where we don't even have a Star Sea Gate in our hands, it will be difficult for us to do anything." Shoichi Daishin said, "The war between the 2 realms is approaching. There are some things that should be cut off." Chapter 977. The Supremacy of the Greater One gazed into the distance and muttered, "The heavenly dragon primordial chi still needs time to return to its peak. However, be it the situation of the divine continent or heaven wasteland, they are all changing at any time. The situation of the Yudu race is still unclear. I'll stay behind to guard White Cloud Mountain. I'll have to trouble junior brother Taoist first to go to the Star Sea." Shoichi Daishin nodded. "Senior brother Taoist first is too kind. I'll go." Dao Venerable One said, "Other than you, I can send 2 more people in. What do you think?" Xian Lin and Yu Yuan will assist junior sister Qingyi in guarding Infinite Wasteland. Kuang Heng is going through another tribulation, so don't disturb him. Shoichi Dashin said, "Nanlai will take charge of the situation, Yuanzhen will communicate with the Great Zhou Empire, Qingning will refine pills, Mengqi will monitor the Netherworld Sea, and Dao Han will monitor Xianmen Tianzong. I'll bring Fengzhou and Yunkong in." Dao Venerable One closed his eyes and thought for a moment. He shook his head and said, "Let Mengqi go to Infinite Wasteland and exchange for Xian Lin. At the same time, exchange for Grand Drum Immortal and Yin Yang Wang. Bring them into the Star Sea." 5 Star Sea gates opened at the same time, which means that there are 5 great demons running amok. Although there are many conflicts between the demons, it is very likely that they will attack you together after discovering you. Especially when it comes to the Star Tomb, the demon races might join forces to deal with us in the early stages. Shoichi Dashin nodded. Senior brother is right. In that case, I'll bring Xian Lin and Fengzhou in. Grand Drum Immortal and Yin Yang Wang will follow. Dao Venerable One said, "The primordial demon ape, the enchantress, and the dragon race might all be in there. Although we don't know who the other 2 are, we have to be careful. However, they kept the Star Sea Gate a secret. I think they're afraid of being robbed by the other demon races. Therefore, it's still unknown whether the Star Tomb can be opened or not. We need to guard against another Star Sea Gate falling into the hands of the Heavenly Enchantress, and the Dragon Race. In such a situation, the Star Tomb might be opened when all 4 Star Sea Gates are gathered." Dao Master Jingyi said, "This is also an opportunity for our temple. Let's take a step back and say that as long as we can get a gate of Star Sea, with the help of the Haotian Mirror, we will have a chance to lock the position of other gates of Star Sea. Taking a step back, even if we can't obtain the Star Sea Gate, if the demon race wants to open the Star Tomb, we can still obstruct them or obtain resources from it." Lord Tai Yi nodded. "That's right. I'll leave the specific response to it to you, junior brother." Apart from me, Xian Lin, and Fengzhou, the number of young disciples who have yet to attain the Essence Soul realm is also limited, but it's much more abundant. If we have a star disciples, we star heaven, star, and saint we can. Qi, spirit star realm and the gods. Without the gate of Star Ocean, this is the only chance we have to enter. Dao Venerable One thought for a moment and said, "Be careful. After all, the environment is very dangerous this time." Shoichi Dashin replied, "Xian Lin, Star Heaven, and I will take care of them. But the more dangerous the environment is, the more the young disciples can be trained." After discussing with Dao Venerable One, Shoichi Dashin was ready to leave. Before he left, his expression suddenly changed. He looked at Dao Venerable One and asked, "Senior brother Dao, can you confirm Miao Shihao's situation?" After a moment of silence, Dao Venerable One said slowly, "Most likely." Shoichi Dashin also fell silent. After a long while, he shook his head and said, "No images of Ancestor Huan have been passed down. We can only see his true appearance when we refine the talisman he left in the spiritual sea." One thing that made them feel very helpless was that one of the 4 ancient heroes of the Void Temple, Yuehua Tian, was extremely mysterious back then. No one in the outside world knew his true appearance, and only a few people within the Void Temple had seen him before. Because there were no images of light or shadow, even in the current era, even the Supreme One Tao Lord, the Righteous One Tao Lord, and the others had only heard of his name and did not recognize him. Yuhuatian was the direct descendant of Yuhuatian, but she did not know what her ancestor looked like before. It was not until the talisman was refined in the spiritual sea and the shadows of Yuhuatian and Li Jingyuan appeared that people in Taishu Temple could see his true appearance. Following that, the people from the Taishu Temple also realized a problem, and that was that Miao Shihao, the true monarch of Mirrorflower who currently resided in the Celestial Sect of Wonders, actually had the same facial features as Yuehua Tian. Although the probability of such a coincidence was very small, it was not impossible. However, for the big shots of Taishu Temple who had a lot of information, they did not think it was a pure coincidence. In particular, Miao Shihao's dislike for Taishu Temple was not a secret. In the past, Taishu Temple did not pay much attention to a rogue cultivator like him who had not even reached the primordial soul stage. In fact, even if Miao Shihao reached the primordial soul stage, it would not affect Taishu Temple, but this was only relative to his personal strength. Now that they gradually understood Miao Shihao's background, Taishu Temple could not take it lightly, especially when Miao Shihao was in Xianmen Tianzong at the moment. Dao Master Tai said slowly, in the Ying Sea, Yuanzhen's disciple, Mingyu, had some connections and tried to sound Miao Shihao out. But in the end, she got nothing. It was not until I saw ancestral Master Huayan's face in the spiritual sea that the truth came to light. Unfortunately, it was too late. It is impossible to find him in a short time. Lin Feng had left the spiritual sea earlier than them. When they were still trapped in the spiritual sea, and Dao Master Qin Yi and the others were busy with Taihua Mountain, Lin Feng had successfully destroyed Mount Shu. In addition to his own strength improving by leaps and bounds, he had also conquered Mount Shu and successfully sharpened the Heaven Punishment Sword. When Dao Master Tai and the others finally got rid of the suppression of the spiritual sea and returned to the vast thousand domains, the truth in front of them was that the immortal heaven had been destroyed and the Heaven Punishment Sword had been achieved. At this time, even Shoichi Daishin and the others had to admit that before the Haotian mirror fully recovered, unless Lin Feng took the initiative to attack White Cloud Mountain, they would not be able to do anything to Lin Feng. In the private conversation between Dao Master Tai, Shoichi Daishin, Dao Master Qin Yi and Dao Master Xian Yi, Dao Master Qin Yi had made it clear that she had underestimated Lin Feng, which was probably the biggest mistake of her life. That day, she had misjudged the progress of the battle between Lin Feng and Mount Shu, so that the immortal heaven had been destroyed and the Heaven Punishment Sword had been achieved. If time could be reversed, she would rather give up Taihua Mountain and intervene in the battle of Mount Shu. The difference of one step was like the difference between heaven and earth. Especially after Lin Feng's trip to Infinite Wasteland and Vastland, Taishu Temple could confirm that Lin Feng had not exerted his full strength in the battle of Mount Shu. At that time, the assessment of Xianmen Tianzong still needed to be adjusted. In the case that the Haotian mirror was incomplete, once a full-scale war broke out outside White Cloud Mountain, the result would most likely be a lose-lose situation, or even mutual destruction. Because of the special nature of Yujing Mountain, the Yin and Yang life and death formation, and the Heaven Punishment Sword formation, as long as the war did not break out on White Cloud Mountain, any neutral ground was actually equivalent to Lin Feng's home ground. Dao Master Tai and Shoichi Daishin looked at each other speechlessly. The Battle of Mount Shu was indeed the turning point in the comparison of strength between Taishu Temple and Xianmen Tianzong. When they were temporarily trapped by the spiritual sea, and Lin Feng had refined the Heaven Punishment Sword, the situation was no longer the same. This was the first behemoth that was truly on the same level as them after entering the ancient era. Before the Haotian mirror was complete, the result of the battle outside White Cloud Mountain was that everyone was separated. At the same time, this behemoth did not exist alone. Instead, it united nearly half of the forces of the human clan in the Divine Land. The course of the battle of destroying Xian had already shown that the plan of a group attack could not be carried out. Shoichi Daishin looked calm and said in a calm tone, "The others are not important, but there is a lot of information that Miao Shihao has. If he provides it to the master of Xianmen, our plan to throw Xianmen Tianzong into the war between the two worlds as an unstable force will be seriously affected. The master of Xianmen will be wary, and it will be much more difficult for our plan." Dao Master Tai also looked calm and said indifferently, "In a situation where the general policy has been decided, no matter how many waves there are in the middle, we just need to try our best to overcome them." Senior brother Tai's words make sense. Shoichi Daishin nodded and turned to leave, preparing to go to the Sea of Stars. With a soft sigh, Dao Master Tai closed his eyes and looked into the distant sky. He did not speak for a long time. At this moment, on Yujing Mountain, Lin Feng looked at the open gate of the Sea of Stars with a calm gaze. At this moment, it was naturally impossible for him to know the content of the conversation between Dao Master Tai and Shoichi Daishin, but some problems were almost on the surface. Over the years, Lin Feng had been thinking about it from time to time. He could see the image of Yuehua sky in the Spirit Sea and guess Miao Shihao's background. There was no reason why the Taishu Temple could not guess it. Even if he did not pay attention to Miao Shihao before, as long as he knew of his existence, it was not difficult for him to think of many things. 5 years ago, not long after Lin Feng returned from the Tianhuang continent, Miao Shihao successfully proved his essence soul. However, after proving his essence soul, Miao Shihao did not communicate with anyone. Without saying a word, he went into seclusion again, and it was a seclusion in the void. Until today, he still had not come out. According to Lin Feng's speculation, Miao Shihao was likely to have a great harvest when he came out of seclusion this time. However, it was not in terms of strength. He was looking forward to it, but he was not in a hurry. After pondering for a moment, Lin Feng used his dermic power to send a voice transmission to the disciples. After explaining the situation, Lin Feng ordered, "Master will stay on Yujing Mountain to cultivate in seclusion. This time, I will send the Brontosaurus clone and the God of War clone into the desolate ancient Sea of Stars. During my seclusion, little Yen and little Lin will stay on the mountain. The others will follow me into the Sea of Stars." Half a year ago, Zhu Yi's original body left the mountain and traveled the world. It was not limited to the vast thousand domains, but also explored the void, traveling to various medium-sized worlds and foreign spaces. 5 years ago, Yang Qing brought Zhou Yunsong back from the Tianhuang continent. After making arrangements, he left Yujing Mountain and began to fulfill his vow to practice medicine and help the people. He was not on the mountain at the moment. Naturally, Lin Feng's words did not include the two of them. However, Zhu Yi's Hao Yang clone was still on the mountain and had the intention to follow. Wang Lin's original body stayed behind and also sent the great demon clone to follow. Lin Feng naturally allowed it. The trip to the Sea of Stars was beneficial to both Hao Yang's clone and the great demon clone. Among the others, Shi Tianhao, Yu Hongyan, Li Yuanfang, and Luo Qingwu had nothing to do, so they naturally followed Lin Feng. The Brontosaurus clone and the God of War clone appeared in front of the Star Ocean Gate at the same time. The Brontosaurus clone waved his hand and gathered everyone with his demonic power, then entered the Star Ocean Gate with the God of War clone. Chapter 978. Lin Feng's Brontosaurus doppelganger and the God of War doppelganger entered the Star Sea Gate together. The place they were at was a realm tunnel. Along this realm tunnel, one could reach the desolate ancient Star Sea. After entering the tunnel, Lin Feng was not in a hurry to move. The God of War doppelganger waved his hand and 10 bronze cauldrons appeared in front of him. The body of the three-legged cauldron was engraved with the pattern of mountains and rivers. It was the magic treasure, the Void Mountain and River Cauldron. Around the Void Mountain and River Cauldron were 9 small bronze cauldrons. They formed a formation and resonated with the Void Mountain and River Cauldron, helping each other. The formation formed by the 9 bronze cauldrons corresponded with the Void Mountain and River Cauldron, forming a 10-cauldron formation. Lin Feng's God of War doppelganger's palms changed continuously. Streams of magic power were injected into the 10-cauldron formation. The 10-cauldron formation emitted a strange fluctuation and faintly interacted with the realm tunnel constructed by the Star Sea Gate. In this way, I should be able to adjust the location of the exit on the other side of the Star Sea and receive me to a place as close to Ding of Shenzhou as possible. Since he had come to the desolate ancient Star Sea, Lin Feng naturally had to look for the creation-grade magic treasure forged by Xia Huang in the ancient times, Ding of Shenzhou. In the past, the 9 treasures of the ancient Heavenly Gate were famous. In terms of fighting power, the central jadeite jade was known as the number 1 of the 9 treasures. However, in Lin Feng's opinion, the southern flaming heavenly divine cauldron was the most important magic treasure among the 9 treasures. It had made outstanding contributions to the rise of the Heavenly Gate. This was because the flaming heavenly divine cauldron was one of the few magic treasures used in alchemy in the history of the Divine Land. The ancient flaming heavenly divine cauldron was also completely destroyed when the Heavenly Gate was destroyed. The flaming heavenly divine cauldron that was seized by Xianmen Tianzong and transferred to the northern militant royal court was refined by the eastern heavenly gate. It was only at the spirit-nurturing grade and its effect was weaker. Time flew by, and now, according to Lin Feng's knowledge, there was only the Sun-Moon Divine Furnace in Taishu Temple that was once a formidable alchemy magic treasure that was on par with the flaming heavenly divine cauldron. It was also a Mahayana-grade treasure that had existed since ancient times, and it was equally as famous as the Flaming Heaven Divine Cauldron. Including the Flaming Heaven Divine Cauldron, the other Dharma treasures that were on par with the Sun-Moon Divine Cauldron had already been submerged in the long river of history. Some were completely destroyed like the Flaming Heaven Divine Cauldron, and some were nowhere to be found. However, these Dharma treasures had to bow before Ding of Shenzhou. The Ding of Shenzhou forged by Xia Huang was the most powerful alchemy treasure in the history of the heaven primal world. Of course, Ding of Shenzhou did not only refine pills and medicines, but in this aspect, it was the only creation-level Dharma treasure. It was indisputably the strongest. Lin Feng naturally attached great importance to Ding of Shenzhou. Today, with the continuous development of Xianmen Tianzong, the sect's power had made great progress, and the Heavenly Heart Cauldron was gradually unable to keep up with the situation. In the past few years, Xiao Yan had the idea to refine a Dharma treasure cauldron himself. With sufficient raw materials, an outstanding alchemy magic treasure could produce an astronomical number of pills every day, which had a huge effect on improving the overall strength of the sect. In the history of the heaven primal world, who in the history of the heaven primal world could be compared to Ding of Shenzhou? However, there were still some things to pay attention to in order to find Ding of Shenzhou. First of all, this treasure was lost in the desolate ancient star ocean. Although several star ocean gates fell into the hands of different people, the current star ocean was still the demon race's territory. Due to the differences in cultivation methods and characteristics, the great demons of the demon race in the star ocean, especially the experts of the star-soul integration realm and above, had higher combat power than usual. They were even more powerful than in the demon world of Tianhuang mainland. For different demon races, the different environment would sometimes affect their strength, and the desolate ancient star ocean was the best home ground for all demon races apart from their respective ancestral lands. Secondly, there was something strange about the death of Xia Huang and the loss of Ding of Shenzhou. Such a secret, Lin Feng could not search for it in the system, he could only search for some superficial information. For example, although Xia Huang had died in a war between the human race and the demon race, no one had witnessed it with their own eyes. Xia Huang's natal light had been extinguished, but there were no bones left, and there were many doubts. Ding of Shenzhou was also missing at that time, and his whereabouts were a mystery. Of course, Lin Feng already knew that Ding of Shenzhou was in the desolate ancient star ocean, but the death of Xia Huang was still full of mysteries. Although most of the human emperors of the primordial and ancient eras had died in battle, it was rare to see someone as strange as Xia Huang. Lastly, the Divine Prefecture Cauldron was a creation-grade Dharma treasure, so it was not easy to collect it. Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone and God of Battle clone moved forward, and soon passed through the realm tunnel and arrived at the exit. In front of him was a faintly discernible membrane of light, like another door. Lin Feng gently touched the door, and the light membrane broke, and the door opened. After passing through the door, Lin Feng officially stepped into the Star Ocean, one of the 7 seas of Tianyuan. In front of him was a dark void, filled with sparkling stars, as if he was directly in the galaxy, but also as if he was in a completely independent space. The stars seemed to be within reach, but they also seemed to be extremely far away. Lin Feng knew that this foreign space called the desolate ancient star ocean was very strange. Just like how every inch of the spirit ocean was closely connected to the vast thousand worlds, the star ocean was also closely connected to the galaxy of the vast thousand worlds. Moreover, unlike the spirit ocean, the star ocean and the real galaxy of the universe had gradually merged together. However, the star ocean and the vast thousand worlds were still 2 different worlds. Only the stars had a strange connection, which allowed humans or beasts to absorb and refine the power of the stars more easily when they were in the star ocean. This wondrous world made Lin Feng sigh in admiration when he saw it. However, he was more impressed by his bad luck, as he had just arrived in the desolate ancient Star Ocean, and he was already greeted with the warmest welcome. When Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone and God of Battle clone appeared in the Star Ocean, there was only a bright light in front of them, as if the raging beasts were about to crush everything nearby into nothingness. In front of them, there was a huge array shining brightly, and among the Star Ocean, the water celestial star was also shining brightly. That huge array was obviously the 9-glory sky-shattering array. Without even asking, the person controlling the array was undoubtedly the great sage Qiongqi, who had not been seen for a long time. This great demon was used to running amok in the past. It was lawless and had infiltrated the vast land of the Divine Prefecture. It set up the 9-glory sky-shattering formation above the North Wind Sea and almost destroyed the entrance to the ancient desolate sea world, burying all the young talents of the human race. Because of this, he had formed a grudge with Xianmen Tianzong, and later sought refuge with the Golden Rock Great Sage in the Cloud Forest realm. Later on, with the help of the Golden Rock Great Sage, he had achieved the Astral Soul Unification realm. However, as Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong grew stronger, the ferocious and lawless Great Sage Qiongqi had no choice but to lie low and not reveal his whereabouts, in case Lin Feng came looking for him. Even the Qiongqi beast tribe that he led had become more low-profile. Seeing Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone and God of Battle clone suddenly appearing in the ancient desolate sea of stars, the great sage Qiongqi could not help but be shocked. At the same time, in another direction, a giant black wolf was crouching in the distant starry sky. It was incredibly huge, like a chain of mountains. Although they had only met once, Lin Feng could still accurately recognize that the giant wolf was the heavenly wolf great sage who had appeared in the Cloud Forest realm in the past. But at that meeting, the two sides did not have a pleasant relationship. Lin Feng swept his divine sense and stared at the heavenly wolf great sage. He found that just like the enchantress, the heavenly wolf great sage had improved. After not seeing him for a long time, the heavenly wolf great sage's cultivation had also risen from the primordial true spirit realm to the astral soul fusion realm. This monster's divine power was extraordinary, and his combat ability was astonishing. Lin Feng estimated that even the great sage Xiang Lu, who had just experienced the tribulation not long ago, might not be a match for him. In the face of the 9 luminaries sky-shattering formation activated by great sage Qiongqi, who was also at the realm of unity of the star soul, the heavenly wolf great sage's performance was exceptionally fierce. His scarlet eyes widened, and the moment he saw Lin Feng, a look of surprise appeared in his eyes. But very quickly, a layer of deep savagery and bloodthirst appeared in his eyes. There was also a third party. It was a giant ape that was completely golden in color and had 6 long horns on its head. The giant ape's eyes were originally fixed on the giant formation. At this moment, when it suddenly saw Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone and God of War clone, it could not help but show a look of surprise on its face. This giant ape was also a great monster of the astral soul fusion realm. Although Lin Feng had not seen it before, he knew its identity. After all, its appearance was very distinctive. It was the leader of the primordial demon ape clan, the 6-horned divine monkey clan, the 6-horned great sage. This monster was the confidant of the current leader of the primordial demon ape clan, the great sage, and its strength was also extraordinary. It was worth mentioning that it was also related to Xianmen Tianzong. In the past, when Shi Tianhao was still in the Yuanying stage, he went to the infinite wasteland to train and killed a 6-horned divine monkey king, who was the grandson of the 6-horned great sage. Since Lin Feng went to the infinite wasteland in search of golden cicada 5 years ago, the appearance of his and Brontosaurus's clone was no longer a secret. At this moment, the 6-horned great sage naturally recognized Lin Feng at a glance. His eyes immediately narrowed, and the 6 horns on his head also flashed with golden light. Before this, a dazzling azure beam of light had already rushed out of the giant 9 luminaries sky-shattering formation and bombarded the sky and earth. On the other side, the heavenly wolf great sage had already spat out a beam of ferocious blood light. It was originally aimed in the direction of Cheongchi Great Sage and the 9 Luminaries Sky-Shattering Formation, but now because of Lin Feng's sudden appearance, it was aimed straight at Lin Feng. For a moment, Lin Feng did not know whether to laugh or cry. His divine sense swept out and found that the place where he was located had been severely damaged. There was a great battle going on here. Unfortunately, when he descended into the Sea of Stars and came out of the portal, he happened to be in the center of the battle. Several parties were fighting in full swing, and he stepped in. At this time, the 9 Luminaries Sky-Shattering Formation had activated the mighty attack of the Water Celestial Star, and the Heavenly Wolf Great Sage's Blood Sea Demonic Light had already arrived in front of Lin Feng. The violent demonic power annihilated everything at the intersection of the two attacks. Chapter 979. Lin Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the thought of stepping into the middle of a battle. Lin Feng scanned his surroundings and identified the Heavenly Wolf Great Sage, Cheongchi Great Sage, and Six Horns Great Sage. At the same time, the attack unleashed by the Heavenly Wolf Great Sage and the 9 Glory Sky Shattering Formation was right in front of Lin Feng. This welcoming ceremony has exceeded my expectations. Lin Feng shook his head with a smile. He had no intention of evading. The Brontosaurus clone and the God of War clone stood on the left and right respectively, facing the attack that was right in front of them. The God of War clone's blood essence began to circulate violently, as if there was a small universe surging within his body. The dragon god heavenly armor on his body exuded a vast dragon might. As the scales on the armor opened and closed, streams of red and yellow air burst forth from within. Above the God of War clone's head, billowing waves of air surged and transformed into a world of light and shadow that was almost materialized. This small world was completely formed from the martial intent of Lin Feng's God of War clone. Everything within it appeared as if it were a real world. In the face of the Heavenly Wolf Great Sage's crimson sea of demonic light, the God of War clone extended his hand expressionlessly and spread open his fingers. Streams of strange air swirled in the starry sky like tens of thousands of gigantic dragons. In the next instant, the ferocious crimson light was firmly grasped by the God of War clone's hand. It struggled incessantly as if it had a life of its own, trying to break free from the God of War clone's grasp. There were countless figures flashing within the crimson light. There were humans, and there were also all kinds of monsters. Regardless of whether they were humans or monsters, the one thing they all had in common was that their faces were extremely twisted and filled with bloodthirst and madness, as if they were going to slaughter all living beings. However, as the God of War clone slowly tightened his grip, the crimson light also gradually lost its vitality. In the end, the crimson color completely faded, and the crimson light disappeared without a trace. The Heavenly Wolf Great Sage's crimson eyes stared intently at Lin Feng. It was as if there were two oceans composed entirely of blood, and the surface of the ocean was flashing with a cold, ferocious light. Wolves were ferocious and cunning by nature, and from that exchange, Heavenly Wolf Great Sage could already tell that even though Lin Feng's War God clone was only at the return to void stage, it was still a formidable foe. In particular, the dragon god heavenly armor that he was wearing was quite impressive too, which complemented the clone of the divine god of battle perfectly, granting them a great boost in strength. From beginning to end, Great Sage Cheongchi did not show up. The 3 great demons chose to retreat for the time being. A man's life was like a tree's shadow. The battle of Mount Shu and the battle with the Kunlong King and Golden Cicada in the Infinite Wasteland had made Lin Feng infamous even in the Infinite Wasteland. Although there were only 2 clones here, no one could be sure if Lin Feng's true body would suddenly appear. Under such circumstances, Heavenly Wolf Great Sage and the other great demons naturally chose to retreat first. However, one could imagine how sullen they felt. Be it Heavenly Wolf Great Sage, Cheongchi Great Sage, or the Six-Horned Great Sage, they were usually arrogant figures, but at this moment, they had no choice but to retreat immediately. 5 years ago, during his trip to the Infinite Wasteland, when he fought with the Kunlong King, Golden Cicada, Blue Sky Dragon King, White Tiger Great Sage, Xiang Lu Great Sage, and other great demons, Lin Feng had once said that unless one's cultivation was at the Dharma-ending realm, or one's actual combat strength was comparable, fighting with them would only be courting death. When Lin Feng said this, his tone was calm and gentle, as if he was describing something that couldn't be more ordinary. However, the facts had fully proved that he was not lying. No matter how unwilling the Heavenly Wolf Great Sage and the other two great demons were, they had no choice but to retreat at this time. Even if they had other ideas, they would at least wait until they had a clear understanding of the situation before making a move. They would not blindly rush forward now. Therefore, the battlefield, which had been filled with sparks and stars a moment ago, suddenly became empty the next moment. Only broken starlight, chaotic airflows, and chaos in the center of the battlefield were left, indicating that the battle that had taken place here before was not an illusion. Although he could not deal with Qiongqi Great Sage and Heavenly Wolf Great Sage, Lin Feng did not pursue them. He looked at the battlefield in front of him, his divine senses sweeping across. Oh, the stars in this area are particularly dense, and the power of the stars is also very gentle, which is easy to refine and absorb. Lin Feng pondered in his heart, the three parties must have taken a fancy to this area, which is why they fought. Because he had used the 10 cauldron formation to disturb the gate of Star C, according to Lin Feng's expectation, he hoped that the exit of the domain passage on this side of the Star C would be as close to Ding of Shenzhou as possible. Now it seemed that his previous efforts had not been in vain. The abnormal situation of the stars in this area was very likely the result of Ding of Shenzhou's influence. Ding of Shenzhou should be hidden in this star domain. However, it was unknown whether it was because of Ding of Shenzhou's own will, but the dermic power fluctuations had completely disappeared. Even if Lin Feng himself came here, he would have to spend a lot of effort to find it. Because the stars were particularly dense, the rich power of starlight also caused a certain degree of interference in the search for Ding of Shenzhou. It's just that I did not expect a gate of Star C to fall into the hands of Golden Rock Great Sage. Lin Feng smiled. It's no wonder. Golden Rock Great Sage's faction could rise so quickly, naturally because he had something to rely on. I wonder when he obtained this gate of Star C? Qiongqi Great Sage could enter here most likely because he had a gate of Star C in his hands. Otherwise, it would not be so easy to borrow the way from the other clans. At the very least, he would have to use the 9 Glory Sky Crumbling formation to exchange for it. After all, the Qiongqi clan did not have a good reputation in Infinite Wilderness. Heavenly Wolf Great Sage and Six-Horned Great Sage did not need to be mentioned. Naturally, they had entered through the gate of Star C in the hands of the Enchantress and the Great Sage. Lin Feng thought to himself, it said that when 4 gate of Star C gather in the Star Tomb, the Star Tomb can be opened. The Star Tomb was a sacred place in the desolate ancient Star Ocean. Legend had it that as time passed, the Star Tomb would gradually accumulate more and more remains of stars. As the name suggested, the remains of stars were the bones of stars. However, they were special. Unlike ordinary stars that would go through a series of changes and turn into nothingness, starlight would condense into something like crystals. Compared to real stars, the star spirit power contained in the remains of stars was much less. However, the star power contained in the remains of stars was much easier to refine and absorb than the power contained in ordinary stars. When the remains of stars in the Star Tomb accumulated to a certain amount, they would become an extremely large amount of resources. These remains of stars were a special product of the desolate ancient Star Ocean. The stars in the Milky Way of the vast thousand worlds could be refined and could receive star power. However, their birth and death were constant. Only in the Star Tomb of the desolate ancient Star Ocean could there be remains of stars. Be it the Primordial Age, the Middle Age, or the Modern Age, regardless of whether the Star Sea was in the hands of the demon race or the human race, the controller would open the Star Tomb periodically and collect the remains of stars. Then, he would close the Star Tomb and come back after a long period of time. Before the Star Sea passageway changed, it was not difficult to open the Star Tomb. However, after the passageway changed and turned into 6 Gate of Star Sea, the conditions became stricter. At least 4 Gate of Star Sea had to be gathered in the Star Tomb before it could be opened. This was not a big deal. The Saint Emperors of the demon race who unified infinite wilderness, vast wilderness, would collect the Gate of Star Sea and control the Star Sea. Until the battle 4,000 years ago, when Yu Huang Tianhai died, the 6 Gate of Star Sea that she controlled were scattered and landed in the hands of different greater demons. Lin Feng was not sure if the Star Tomb had been opened again after the war between the two worlds. However, if it had not been opened, after 4,000 years of accumulation, the remains of stars in the Star Tomb would probably be an astronomical number. Dragon race, ape race, heavenly charm, golden rock. Lin Feng frowned slightly. Although the possibility of them working together is very low, it is not impossible. I need to plan ahead. Chapter 980. After seeing Great Sage Qiongqi, Lin Feng knew that there was a Star Sea Gate in the hands of Golden Rock Great Sage. Similarly, when Heavenly Wolf Great Sage, Qiongqi Great Sage, and Six-Horned Great Sage saw Lin Feng, they would also know that Lin Feng most likely had a Star Sea Gate. Under such circumstances, it was very likely that the demon race would unite and make things difficult for Lin Feng. Since the ancient era, the human race no longer had a relatively stable way to enter the desolate ancient Star Sea. After the ancient age, the desolate ancient Star Sea had once again become the paradise of the demonic race. Under such circumstances, a human suddenly grasping a Star Sea Gate would touch the bottom line of many great demonic beasts. It was very likely that they would band together. Moreover, obtaining the Star Sea Gate from Lin Feng was also a huge benefit. Under these two factors, it was very likely that the great demons would be more united than before. Obtaining the Star Sea Gate in Lin Feng's hands was also a great convenience for them to open the Star Tomb. After Lin Feng went to the vast land of infinite wilderness 5 years ago, the demon race had a more intuitive understanding of Lin Feng's strength. While they were more wary of him, they also learned more about Lin Feng, which made it more convenient for them to adjust their position and make plans. Lin Feng's Brontosaurus doppelganger turned back and gently tapped on the Star Sea Gate. A ray of light flew out and landed on the Star Sea Gate. The ray of light connected with the Brontosaurus doppelganger and soon disappeared. The light film at the exit of the Star Sea Gate reappeared, blocking the gate. Just like that, the door was hidden in the void and disappeared without a trace. The gate was still open, but others could not detect its specific location. The ray of light connected with the Brontosaurus doppelganger made it convenient for Lin Feng to return in a very short time after leaving the Star Sea Gate. The desolate ancient Star Sea was as vast as the universe, and it was a very huge foreign space. At the same time, because of the flow of stars, the internal space was constantly changing, and there was never a moment of stillness. Although it was not as chaotic as the void battlefield, and not as bewitching as the Sea of Ocean, one could not take it lightly. If he wasn't careful, he might even fall into the trap here. The exit of the Gate of Star Ocean was like a lonely boat floating in the sea, drifting with the waves and changing its position constantly. After arranging everything, Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone and the God of War clone left and approached the starfield with the densest starlight. Not long after Lin Feng left, the starry skies suddenly shook violently. From 3 different directions, a figure of light gathered here and then stopped at a place far away from each other. They were none other than Heavenly Wolf Great Sage, Qiongqi Great Sage, and Six Horns Great Sage. The Heavenly Wolf Great Saint's scarlet eyes swept across the void. He snorted and his gaze fell on the area where the starlight was concentrated. He went there. The faces of Great Sage Qiongqi and Six-Horned Great Sage were a little unsightly. That was their original target, especially Qiongqi, who was in an extremely bad mood. He thought he had found a good place, but just as he was about to enter, Heavenly Wolf Great Sage and Six-Horned Great Sage were attracted by him and confronted him on the spot. He couldn't leave even if he wanted to. When they saw him, Heavenly Wolf Great Sage and Six-Horned Great Sage naturally guessed that one of the gates of Star Ocean was in the hands of Golden Rock Great Sage. Heavenly Wolf Great Sage chuckled. I have to admit, I really underestimated Abyssal Thunder Golden Rock. He's quietly stirred up a lot of trouble and even got his hands on a gate of Star Ocean. Cheongchi Great Sage sneered as well. Death Prison, do you think you're the enchantress? From the beginning to the end, you're nothing but a reckless clown in my emperor's eyes. TSK, Wu Qi, have you really been raised by abyssal thunder golden rock? Heavenly Wolf Great Sage laughed disdainfully. Abyssal thunder isn't here. No matter how you shout, he can't hear you. Save it. You're making me sick. Who doesn't know that your Cheongchi clan is rebellious by nature? Do you think Abyssal Thunder really trusts you? In his eyes, the most trustworthy ones are the bird-type demons. Cheongchi Great Sage said indifferently, my emperor has the strength to make me submit to him. He has provided me with benefits that move me. What's so strange about me submitting to him now? Do you want me to submit to you, Tianmei's follower? Heavenly Wolf Great Sage grinned, revealing a mouthful of sharp, snow-white teeth. He looked extremely ferocious. He Wu Qi, do you really think you're a big shot? Come. Both of us are at the astral soul fusion realm. Without the 9 glory sky-shattering formation, I can easily beat up 3 to 5 trash like you. Even if you have the 9 glory sky-shattering formation, do you think you're my match one-on-one? Both of you seem to have come into contact with the master of the celestial gate in the cloudy forest realm? The 6-horned great sage, who had been silent since he appeared, suddenly spoke. Hearing his words, Heavenly Wolf Great Sage and Cheongchi Great Sage fell silent for a moment. Then, 2 ferocious gazes fell on the 6-horned great sage at the same time. The 6-horned great sage's words undoubtedly reopened their old scars. The 6-horned great sage turned a blind eye to the Heavenly Wolf Great Sage and Cheongchi Great Sage's ferocious gazes. His expression was extremely calm. However, when Heavenly Wolf Great Sage and Cheongchi Great Sage saw his expression, they frowned slightly. He was clearly the weakest among the 3, but the 6-horned great sage was the calmest. His gaze was fixed on Lin Feng as he entered the star field. Heavenly Wolf Great Sage frowned. The one in the cloudy forest realm isn't the true body. Although Lin Feng was also the ultimate winner in the cloudy forest realm, the strength he displayed at that time was far less terrifying than it was now. It was so terrifying that even the Heavenly Wolf Great Sage and Cheongchi Great Sage, who had always been arrogant and ferocious, had to avoid him. To put it bluntly, when facing Lin Feng, they had to tuck their tails between their legs. The Divine Land's judgment about Lin Feng had reached the same conclusion in the Infinite Wilderness Vast Land. Heavenly Wolf Great Sage and the Enchantress had discussed this more than once. They both believed that the Lin Feng in the Cloudy Forest realm was most likely just a clone. Cheongchi Great Sage stared at the 6-horned Great Sage. Yun Guang, what are you trying to do? The 6-horned Great Sage was the 6-horned Great Sage's name. The 6-horned Great Sage said indifferently, Shi Tianhao, the disciple of the Mystic Gate's master, killed my grandson. I must avenge him. Heavenly Wolf Great Sage and Cheongchi Great Sage could feel the 6-horned Great Sage's determination. Although the 6-horned Great Sage was the patriarch of the 6-horned Divine Monkey clan and had to act cautiously for the clan's development, some hatred would make people exceptionally stubborn. At the same time, some hatred would make people fight to the death even if they knew there was a huge gap between them and the other party. Although Heavenly Wolf Great Sage and Cheongchi Great Sage didn't think much of it, they weren't surprised. 5 years ago, when Lin Feng came to the Infinite Wilderness Vast Land, the 6-horned Great Sage happened to be away. When he returned to the Spirit Abyss Mountain, Lin Feng had already brought Shi Tianhao back to the Divine Land. Cheongchi Great Sage shook his head. Just now, only 2 of the Mystic Gate's master's clones showed up. It's still unknown whether Shi Tianhao entered the Star Ocean or not. He's here. The 6-horned Great Sage said decisively, I can feel that he came in with 2 of the Mystic Gate's master's clones. When Great Sage Cheongchi heard this, he did not say anything. He knew that the 6-horned Divine Monkey clan had a great innate ability, and that was their sudden inspiration. Their perception was extremely strong, and they could maintain a very strong perception of opponents with higher cultivation levels. He looked at the top of the 6-horned Great Sage's head and saw that one of the 6 sharp horns had been broken. It was Lin Feng's clone that brought Shi Tianhao into the ancient star ocean, not his main body. Moreover, the six-horned great sage was extremely persistent in this matter. After consuming his own qi and Dao essence, he finally found some clues. The heavenly wolf great sage shook his huge wolf head and said, "Then you can go find trouble with the celestial sect of 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 the celestial sect." Qiongqi great sage said, "After killing the Mystic Gates Master's clone, we won't be able to stop his main body. That's an opponent that only His Majesty, the Enchantress, and the Great Sage can compete with." "His main body can't come over," the six-horned Great Sage said. The six-horned Great Sage said, "As long as the three of us join forces and receive the power of the 3-star ocean gates and set up a formation here, we can lock his star ocean gate in a short time. The great Tao of star ocean space is mysterious. If the star ocean gate is locked, his main body won't be able to come by sacrificing a clone or a Dharma body. When the time comes, I only want Shi Tianhao. You can have the rest." The six-horned great sage's eyes shone with a fierce light. His 2 clones are good stuff, not to mention the star domain that's rich in the power of stars. If everything goes well, we can even take the star ocean gate from the Mystic Gates Master. The heavenly wolf great sage and Qiongqi great sage looked at each other. Although they were opponents fighting to the death just a moment ago, the huge benefits placed in front of them at the moment made them temporarily put aside their enmity and join forces to deal with others and Lin Feng. Seeing this, the six-horned great sage secretly contacted the great sage. After all, to receive the power of the star ocean gate of the ape race, the great sage had to agree. The six-horned great sage had even persuaded the great sage to take action personally. The bargaining chips were Lin Feng's star ocean gate and Brontosaurus's clone. For the six-horned great sage, his only goal was to kill Shi Tianhao. As for what the great sage would do, he couldn't guarantee. The heavenly wolf great sage and Qiongqi great sage naturally wouldn't trust the six-horned great sage so easily, so they each contacted others. In addition to receiving the power of the star ocean gate, they also didn't think that the current lineup was enough to kill Lin Feng and his party. At the same time, the few great demons also thought of the problem of the star tomb in their hearts. This time they also had plans in this regard when they joined hands. It's just that the distribution of benefits from the star tomb is even harder to coordinate. The few parties all placed the key to breaking out of this predicament on Lin Feng's gate of Star Sea. Or were there other star ocean gates? Opportunities always appeared inadvertently. Act quickly. The star ocean gate of the Mystic Gates Master has disappeared. We can only circle a general area and seal it off. "The range is limited," said the six-horned great sage. "As time passes, the star ocean gate will continue to float. The possible area of existence will become larger and larger. It will be difficult to seal it off." At the same time, Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone and the God of War clone were shuttling between many stars. It's said that compared to other regions, the stars are much denser, but in reality, the distance between the stars is still extremely far. In the process of continuously advancing, Lin Feng also released his divine sense to continuously explore this region. The 10 Cauldron Formation played a key role here, helping Lin Feng to guide the way. As he moved forward, Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. He stopped and saw a dark void in front of him. Stars were everywhere in the star ocean. The star field Lin Feng was in was even more so. However, the vast universe in front of him was pitch black, without a single star. Chapter 981. Facing the pitch-black void before him, the eyes of the Brontosaurus clone lit up. Red, yellow, green, and blue lightning intertwined. In an instant, the red, yellow, and blue colors disappeared, and the entire lightning turned green. The green lightning shuttled through the dark void, but it did not find anything. Lin Feng's expression remained unchanged. He once again activated the 10 Cauldrons formation and combined the green lightning with the formation's power. This time, the void finally reacted. After a violent tremble, invisible ripples spread out like ripples on water. Bursts of powerful and mysterious energy aura fluctuated in a reserved manner. It was only when the green lightning bolts, which had been reinforced by the power of the 10 cauldrons formation, came into contact with them did they have a slight reaction. Although the power aura was contained, Lin Feng could still clearly distinguish the vigorous aura. It was the aura of a creation-grade artifact. It was as grand as the sky, like a world of creation. The scene in front of him was still the dark void, but it seemed to have opened up an independent world in the desolate ancient galaxy. It existed on its own and evolved according to its own principles. In the ancient era, the creation-grade artifact refined by Xia Huang, Ding of Shenzhou. Unlike the Grand Imperial Palace's majesty and domineering, and unlike the immortal Dragon City's eternal protection, the power aura contained in the creation-grade artifact of the human sovereign made people feel that it was heavy, extremely heavy. It was as if it had condensed the weight of the vast world in the divine land. It was so heavy that it was difficult to calculate. It could suppress the changes of all things and suppress the reversal of the world. Stabilizing divine land, impressive indeed. Lin Feng was interested. He looked up and down. This Ding of Shenzhou must have unleashed its own power and combined with the galaxy world. Although they are independent, they are closely attached to the desolate ancient galaxy. In this state, Ding of Shenzhou no longer showed its original appearance. It existed in the form of an invisible world. It would take a lot of effort to collect this artifact. Lin Feng's God of War clone tapped the 10 cauldron formation lightly. The formation floated in the air and approached the world formed by Ding of Shenzhou. When the 10 cauldron spirit formation came into contact with the domain of that world, the undulations of the domain became more and more obvious. A passageway was faintly discernible. Lin Feng smiled faintly. The passageway in front of him was like an illusion of light and shadow, constantly fluctuating. Through this passage that had not yet stabilized, Lin Feng could vaguely see the world created by the divine prefecture cauldron. The environment was different from the desolate ancient star sea. It was similar to the outside world and the vast land of the divine prefecture. Mountains and rivers, the alternation of the sun and moon, the vast plains, the vast sea, the great desert, it felt as if they had returned to the divine land. Lin Feng's God of War clone activated the 10 cauldron formation to stabilize the tunnel while he carefully sensed the flow of spiritual qi. He discovered that the biggest difference between this place and the divine land was that the space here contained a lot of star energy. This must be the result of Ding of Shenzhou being nurtured by the starlight for a long time in the desolate ancient star ocean. Dazzling starlight flickered in the air from time to time. Compared to the desolate ancient star ocean outside, it was gentler and easier to refine. On the other side, Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone flicked his sleeve. Shi Tianhao, Yu Hongyan, and the others also landed in front of the entrance of this little Kelowna world. In addition, Wang Lin's Great Demon clone and Zhu Yi's Hao Yang clone were also there. Shi Tianhao, Wang Lin, and Zhu Yi also carefully sensed the environment in the little Kelowna world through the domain tunnel and nodded in unison. Shi Tianhao naturally did not need to say much. Wang Lin's Great Demon clone and Zhu Yi's Hao Yang clone were also known for their physical strength. Refining and absorbing the star energy in the desolate ancient star ocean and purifying their bodies was very beneficial to them. Among the others, Yu Hongyan had already cultivated to the middle stage of Yuanying, the level of the 9 heavens qi guzzling. At this time, the acupoints of her body opened up and spots of starlight entered her body. She did not enter the little Kelowna world. Just being in the desolate ancient star ocean made her feel that the bottleneck of her recent cultivation was showing signs of loosening. Although Li Yuanfang and Luo Qingwu were not pure martial adepts, they also felt that this was indeed a good place to cultivate. Compared to the environment of Yujing Mountain, each had its own advantages. The starlight in the little Kelowna world is gentler. It is more beneficial for the cultivation of us human cultivators than in the desolate ancient star ocean. Luo Qingwu stared at the tunnel that was gradually stabilizing and said, We have already experienced the baptism of the primordial starlight once. But now that we are here, it seems that there is a possibility for us to go one step further. Li Yuanfang said, "That is true. But we still need to plan and make appropriate arrangements. We will listen to Master's instructions." Luo Qinggu heard this and nodded repeatedly. But at this moment, Lin Feng's Brontosaurus doppelganger was the first to frown. Then his god of war doppelganger, Wang Lin's great demon doppelganger, and Shi Tianhao also frowned. Zhu Yi's Hao Yang doppelganger also looked back. In the vast sea of stars, 3 huge spots of light suddenly appeared. They were far away from each other, but they shone upon each other, forming a triangle that enveloped the vast starry sky. The power within them caused the entire sea of stars to almost boil. Lin Feng frowned slightly. The power of the gate of Star Ocean is fluctuating, but it is not the real gate of Star Ocean. Instead, it seems that someone has received the power within and strengthened themselves. Under the effect of the power of the 3 gate of Star Ocean, the star sector where Lin Feng and the others were in suddenly fluctuated violently. Near the edge of the triangle, a mass of starlight lit up and gradually revealed a door. It was the gate of Star Ocean that belonged to Lin Feng. At the same time this gate of Star Ocean appeared, it slowly closed. The starlight dissipated, leaving only a lonely gate floating in the starry sky. On Jade Capital Mountain in the Divine Land, Lin Feng's main body stopped his cultivation and looked at the domain passage in front of him with a faint smile. Although the entrance on his side was not affected, the exit on the other side had been sealed. Interesting, it should be those 3 just now. After contacting Skirich, Golden Rock, and Heavenly Charm, they used the resonance of the 3 gate of Star Ocean to seal the gate in my hand in a short period of time. He chuckled. I just don't know if the Enchantress and the other 2 will come in person. In the desolate ancient sea of Star, Lin Feng's god of war doppelganger stretched his neck and said, "Little E, you take over and continue to open this passage." Zhu Yi's Hao Yang doppelganger nodded. "Yes, master." Although it was a martial arts doppelganger, it had no problem activating the 10 cauldron formation to continue to open the little Kelowna world. Wang Lin's great devil doppelganger exchanged a smile with Shi Tianhao, and followed behind Lin Feng's Brontosaurus doppelganger and god of war doppelganger, flying in the direction of the gate of Star Ocean. And after casting a spell to seal Lin Feng's gate of Star in a short period of time, there were also several figures approaching the gate of Star from 3 different directions. In one direction, 2 figures were walking side by side. One of them was a tall man who was more than 2 meters tall, wearing a black wolf skin cloak. His black hair was draped over his back, his face was rough, and his eyes were blood red. It was the human form of the heavenly wolf great sage. Beside him followed a giant beast. It had the face of a human and the body of a leopard. Its ears were like the ears of a cow, and it only had 1 eye. As it moved forward, it held a long tail in its mouth. It was a Zhujian. This demon was also known as the Fat God. It had extraordinary strength and was good at shooting arrows. The arrows it shot were extremely powerful. Those who were hit by it would most likely die. Even if they were lucky enough to survive, they would suffer from lingering injuries that were almost impossible to heal. They would be crippled for the rest of their lives. The great sage Zhu Jian, who was walking beside the heavenly wolf great sage, was a Zhu Jian who had already gone through the first tribulation. He was extremely powerful, and even the heavenly wolf great sage, who had always been arrogant, was afraid of him. Everyone knew that the heavenly wolf great sage was the #1 warrior under the heavenly charm great sage. However, the heavenly wolf great sage himself knew very well that among the demons under his senior sister's command, the low-key great sage Zhu Jian was his senior sister's trump card. The Enchantress had purposely arranged for the great sage Zhu Jian to focus on cultivating in seclusion. It was only in recent years that the Enchantress had gradually become famous, and the situation in Tianhuang Wasteland had become more turbulent and unpredictable. The great sage Zhu Jian had gradually come to the forefront. It was only then that the others realized that the hidden forces that the Enchantress had been operating for many years were also extraordinary. On the other side, There were also two great demons walking together. One of them had wings on its back and was covered in the fur of a hedgehog. It looked like a cow and a tiger, and its aura was extremely fierce. It was the great sage Cheongchi. The great demon beside him was the complete opposite. It had a noble and proud aura, and its entire body was dark blue. It dragged a gorgeous tail and its body shone with five-colored light. It was a peacock. The eyes of the heavenly wolf great sage and the great sage Zhujian flickered slightly when they saw this peacock. In the early years when the golden rock great sage had just made a name for himself, there was once a great sage peafowl who called him brother. The two of them were very close and could be said to be friends of life and death. However, as the golden rock great sage became more and more famous, the great sage peafowl gradually disappeared and no one knew his whereabouts. Others thought that the great sage peafowl had gradually drifted apart because of the golden rock great sage's ambition, or that the great sage peafowl had died unexpectedly. But today, seeing the great sage peafowl and the great sage Cheongchi walking together, everyone knew clearly that the great sage peafowl and the golden rock great sage were still on the same side all these years. The reason why there had been no news of them for so many years was most likely the same as the great sage Zhujian's situation. The heavenly wolf great sage's blood-red eyes flashed. He noticed that in addition to the five-colored light on the great sage peafowl's body, there was also a layer of demonic purple light on his tail feathers. The golden rock great sage was willing to share this power, which showed how deep their friendship was. As for the great sage peafowl, just like the golden rock great sage, he had already begun his tribulation. There was still only the six-horned great sage in the third group. The other experts of the ape clan were nowhere to be seen. At this moment, he was looking at the great sage Zhujian and the great sage peafowl with cold eyes. Among the subordinates of the enchantress, the heavenly wolf great sage or the great sage Zhujian, it was still debatable who was the second in command. However, the great sage peafowl was definitely the second in the golden rock great sage's camp. His status was equivalent to that of the great sage Zhu Yan in the ape clan and the Kunlong king in the dragon clan. Even the great sage Cheongchi, who had mastered the 9 glory sky crumbling formation and possessed extraordinary strength, was ranked behind him. The great sage Zhujian and the great sage peafowl had finally come out from behind the scenes. The situation in Infinite Wilderness was becoming more and more delicate. At this moment, everyone's target was the Star Ocean Gate that Lin Feng possessed. Chapter 982. The six-horned great sage was all alone. Not only did the heavenly wolf great sage, Cheongchi great sage, and the other great demons not look down on him, but they were even more concerned about him. No one would believe that the six-horned great sage was only after Shi Tianhao. Everyone wanted to obtain the Star Gate. Even though everyone was working together, if one side did not have enough strength, it would be impossible to guarantee their own interests. Even Lin Feng raised his eyebrows slightly upon seeing this. If Zhu Yan great sage isn't coming, does that mean the great sage will come in person? As he pondered, Lin Feng and the others had already approached the Star Gate and confronted the heavenly wolf great sage and the other great demons. The great sage of the heavenly wolf stared at Lin Feng with a pair of blood-red eyes. Without saying anything more, he looked up to the sky and howled. He had already revealed his true form, turning into a huge black wolf as huge as a mountain. He immediately pounced toward the Stargate. Lin Feng's God of War clone stood in front of the Stargate and looked at the heavenly wolf great sage expressionlessly. He then stepped forward and reached out with both hands, grabbing at the heavenly wolf great sage. The left hand was above, and the right hand was below. As he reached out, he alternated between the left hand and the right hand. As he opened and closed his fingers, heaven and earth seemed to have been turned upside down. The powerful force was born from the yin and yang life and death formation, and was integrated into martial arts. Facing this force that seemed to be turning heaven and earth upside down, the heavenly wolf great sage's eyes turned slightly solemn. However, he did not stop and continued to rush forward. A dazzling blood-red light appeared on his mountain-like body and spread out in the starry sky like a boundless ocean of blood. Boundless blood chi rose and dyed the stars in the void with a layer of blood. In the ocean of blood, countless wronged souls, be they humans or demons, were howling together. The ocean of blood kept rolling and shooting beams of demonic light in all directions. They forcibly broke through the fist intent of the God of War clone and pounced at Lin Feng. The God of War clone's expression was still indifferent. The dragon god heavenly armor on his body let out a mighty dragon roar. His figure, together with the armor on his body, grew to a height of several thousand zhang. He was no smaller than the heavenly wolf great sage in his true form. The armor's helmet appeared like a dragon's head. With the helmet on, Lin Feng's God of War clone seemed to have transformed into a dragon-headed giant. The armor's leaves opened and closed. Dragon aura and auspicious clouds covered the sky. He stretched out his hands and grabbed the heavenly wolf great sage's front paw with one hand, while the giant's head with the other. The bloody mouth was inches away from him, but the divine god of battle completely ignored it. He raised his hand and lifted the wolf's head, before he raised his knee and struck the wolf's ribs below its abdomen. Heavenly wolf great saint roared furiously. Stars emerged from the blood sea around him, flashing with demonic and overbearing blood-red starlight. He flipped his body and dodged the God of War clone's attack. His enormous figure was extremely agile. He kept flickering in the space and changed his position. In the next moment, he had arrived behind the God of War clone and opened his mouth, biting at his neck. The dragon-headed giant's face was covered by a helmet, revealing only a pair of eyes. His eyes flickered with an icy flicker. The originally thick and heavy dragon god heavenly armor suddenly changed. Red and yellow light interweaved, transforming into golden light dragons that spiraled around the body. Those golden light dragons suddenly exploded together, turning into thousands of golden light rays that shot in all directions. The golden rays sliced through the air with an incomparably ferocious and powerful attack. The golden rays connected into one and formed a tight defense, wrapping around the clone of the divine god of battle without leaving any gaps. The heavenly wolf great sage bit down. Although he managed to crush the golden rays, he did not feel good either, as if he had bitten a porcupine. After breaking through the golden rays, the heavenly wolf great sage made up his mind. He continued to bite at Lin Feng's God of War clone. At the same time, he swiped his front claws forward. However, Lin Feng's God of War clone had already crouched down after being blocked by the golden rays. He dodged the heavenly wolf great sage's attack and backed off, crashing into the heavenly wolf great sage's abdomen. He did not even turn around. He bent his elbow and aimed it at the heavenly wolf great sage's abdomen. Before his elbow made contact with the heavenly wolf great sage's abdomen, the space between the tip of Lin Feng's elbow and the heavenly wolf great sage's abdomen was shattered into nothingness. Even the celestial wolf great sage had no doubt that if he were to be hit in his weak spot, his abdomen would probably be smashed to pieces. The heavenly wolf great sage let out a shrill howl. Purple light flickered in the depths of his eyes. He abruptly turned around and was once again forced back by Lin Feng. However, he opened his mouth wide and shot out a beam of blood light, knocking the God of War clone off balance and forcing him to retreat. The next moment, the heavenly wolf great sage let out a furious roar. A huge amount of blurry air currents, like a primeval universe, appeared from the ocean of blood around him and gathered together. Everything in the surrounding space was being absorbed. It was as if a primeval universe was rapidly being born inside the air mass. It was the secret art of the beast tribe that shared the same lineage as the enchantress, the little chaotic fetus curse. Once the air mass came into contact with its target, the development of the primeval universe would immediately reverse and return to the primeval state, causing both the target and itself to vanish into thin air. The divine god of battle's clone frowned slightly. He swung his palm down and unleashed the barrier of the heavens. Even though his martial art clone was not as powerful as his main body, he was still able to temporarily seal the heavenly wolf great sage's little chaotic origin concealment curse. Following this, the divine god of war threw a punch forward and completely shattered the air mass that was stuck in a stagnant state. Meanwhile, the heavenly wolf great sage pounced forward again. The ocean of blood continued to rumble and break the golden light of the dragon god heavenly armor on the divine god of war clone. He then swiped his claw downward, leaving sharp cracks in the void. The cracks were glowing with a blood-red glow. Although the divine god of war clone was not injured, he could feel his strength depleting. He felt weak from blood loss, as if he was injured. Cursed blood claw. Isn't this an ability from the book of mixed origin demon art? It's a higher level and originates from the first volume of the Heavenly Path demon art? Lin Feng's eyes flickered. The enchantress has indeed made some progress, but I wonder if it's complete? While having this thought, the divine god of war clone did not back off. He executed a devastating hammer of 4 symbols, causing the sky to change color as he counterattacked the heavenly wolf great sage. As Lin Feng's divine god of war clone fought against the heavenly wolf great sage, the others were also engaged in a fierce battle. Brontosaurus's clone targeted the heavenly wolf great sage and the 9 dazzling sky-shattering formation again. This time, Lin Feng let the Brontosaurus's clone reveal his true form. His demonic aura swept across the sky, suppressing the heavenly wolf great sage who was relying on the 9 dazzling sky-shattering formation. Qiongqi's eyes flickered fiercely. He began to weigh the pros and cons, wondering if he should pay a certain price to activate the ultimate transformation of the 9 dazzling sky-shattering formation. Meanwhile, the Peafowl great sage, who had come with him, was surrounded by a 5-colored glow. A beam of 5-colored light fell and cut off the yin and yang 4 symbols divine lightning around the Brontosaurus's clone. The Peafowl's 5-colored light ability? It's indeed extraordinary. Although the Peafowl great sage had not shown himself for a long time, his talent and the 5-colored light ability were well known throughout the great heaven primordial world. Naturally, Lin Feng knew about it. This ability had the same effect as the Jade Dragon Flame of the Jade Dragon clan. It was used to break all spells in the world. Compared to the Jade Dragon Flame, which could burn like maggots in one's bones and continuously restrict the enemy's magic power, the 5-colored light of the Peafowl great sage would only take effect for a brief moment. However, the 5-colored light of the Peafowl great sage was even more domineering than the Jade Dragon Flame in terms of breaking spells instantly. Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone glanced at the Peafowl great sage before turning his attention back to the heavenly wolf great sage and the 9 dazzling sky-shattering formation. It was not that he was ignoring the Peafowl great sage, but he had other means to deal with it. The god of war clone that was fighting with the heavenly wolf great sage raised his hand and raised a tree branch that was flickering with a dark golden glow. It was the miraculous Shala tree. It was not used to block the heavenly wolf great sage's attack, but to stop the Peafowl great sage. The miraculous Shala tree was already a Mahayana-grade artifact, so it could unleash its full power at will. The dark golden glow flickered and immediately blocked the Peafowl great sage's 5-colored light. Although each beam of 5-colored light of the miraculous Shala tree would cut off a portion of the dark golden glow, the miraculous Shala tree would soon produce even more dark golden glow, not allowing the Peafowl great sage to take a single step forward. The Peafowl great sage's expression did not change, but his gaze became solemn. He had successfully overcome the tribulation and was no longer in a weakened state. Even when facing the miraculous Shala tree, who was at the unity of the Star Soul's realm, the great sage's defenses were strong enough to block the attacks of others and even the Jade Dragon Flame, but they could not withstand the Peafowl great sage's 5-colored light of the Peafowl great sage. To be honest, his 5-colored light of the miraculous Shala tree was the one that was least afraid of the enemy's defense. The miraculous Shala tree's 5-colored light was one of the natural nemeses of the miraculous Shala tree. But at this moment, although the miraculous Shala tree was at a disadvantage, he could not truly break through its defenses. And this was the result of the miraculous Shala tree acting alone. Lin Feng's Brontosaurus doppelganger was not adept at controlling artifacts, and the god of war doppelganger was busy fighting the celestial wolf great sage. If Lin Feng could divert some of his attention to controlling the miraculous Shala tree, the miraculous Shala tree's defenses would be even stronger. Although the Golden Rock Great Sage had mentioned that Lin Feng's artifact was quite extraordinary, The peafowl great sage only realized the profundity of it after personally touching it. The great sage Zhu Jian, who had come with the heavenly wolf great sage, was fighting with Shi Tianhao. Beside Shi Tianhao, there was a broad-edged long sword. The blade of the sword was engraved with ancient runes. Its entire body was pale gold, and it emitted a majestic sword will that could shake the heavens and realms. It was none other than the Zongtian Dao Jian. After the sword fell into Lin Feng's hands 5 years ago, it finally chose to submit to him. He originally wanted to improve himself, so he sought the sword shadow of the ninth heaven sword that Chu Yang possessed. That was why he had clashed with Shenmen Tianzong just now. There was no real ill will between the two. Now that he was teaming up with Shi Tianhao to fight the great sage Zhu Jian, the great sage could not get close to the gate of Star Ocean for the time being. On the other side, the six-horned great sage saw Shi Tianhao, and his eyes flashed fiercely. He wanted to step forward, but he was blocked by Wang Lin's great devil doppelganger, and could only sigh helplessly. The battle fell into a stalemate for a while, and both sides engaged in a chaotic battle around the gate of Star Ocean. As Lin Feng fought the enemy, his consciousness was constantly on guard against the great sage, the enchantress, and the golden rock great sage. Chapter 983. Between the vast sea of stars, waves of powerful magical energy fluctuated one after another. A chaotic battle unfolded around a gate in the sea of stars. The sky darkened, and the blurred boundary between the desolate ancient star ocean and the universe of the boundless thousand worlds became even more fragile. Affected by the mana and divine abilities of Lin Feng and the others, there were even stars that were destroyed together. Great sage Zhu Jian held his long tail in his mouth and stood up. He raised his left arm in the air, and black light instantly formed a giant bow. He pulled the bowstring with his right claw, and a black light arrow was formed. The tip of the arrow was pointed at Shi Tianhao. Shi Tianhao frowned slightly. His instincts told him that he was in great danger. The black light on the tip of the drawn bow kept swirling like a whirlpool, sucking away all the spirit energy and starlight around it like a black hole. In the next moment, great sage Zhu Jian loosened his right claw, and a dazzling white light burst out from the black hole. The black and white light arrow left the bow. At great sage Zhu Jian's level of cultivation, an arrow shot through space and time. The moment the arrow left the bow was the moment it hit its target. Only an opponent whose comprehension of the power of space had reached a certain level could restore the original appearance of the arrow under the influence of the opponent's magical energy. The black and white light arrow shot out. When it reappeared, it was already in between Shi Tianhao and the great sage Zhu Jian. It was as if the distance between the great sage Zhu Jian's giant bow and this position had never existed. Only at this point did the black and white light arrow reappear. Like a real arrow, it shot toward Shi Tianhao. Even so, the arrow was extremely fast, and it arrived in a blink of an eye. If it were an ordinary opponent, great sage Zhu Jian would have killed them with a casual arrow. This was because the opponent would have been shot before they could react. Even Shi Tianhao, who had unleashed all of his power, was in a dangerous situation. The light arrow brushed past his body. If it were someone else's attack, he might have taken it head-on, but great sage Zhu Jian's turbid wave demon arrow was something he should avoid. However, Shi Tianhao had never been one to take a beating without retaliating. The power of the Kunpeng burst forth, transforming into a rock silhouette that increased his speed to the extreme as he rushed toward the great sage Zhu Jian. Great sage Zhu Jian did not mind that he was being closed in on. He held the black light giant bow in his left claw and swung it horizontally, clashing with Shi Tianhao's stone sword. The powerful force repelled Shi Tianhao. His physical strength was also one of the best in the monster clan, not inferior to the ancestral crocodile and Lu Yuan at the same realm. However, the ancestral crocodile great sage and Lu Yuan were only at the star-soul unification realm in the past, while he had already begun to experience tribulations. However, ever since he returned from Infinite Wasteland, Shi Tianhao had gone out to train from time to time and stayed on Jade Capital Mountain to cultivate. Compared to the time when his primordial spirit had just been formed, his mystical powers and dermic powers had improved. Even great sage Zhujian was amazed. If I was still at the Star Soul Unification realm, I probably wouldn't be able to do anything to this kid. Great sage Zhujian's heart trembled. However, he was now a great monster who had just experienced a tribulation, and his mystical powers and demonic powers were extraordinary. Shi Tianhao's primordial spirit incarnation realm was still not enough to fight against him. Especially now that he was in the desolate ancient star ocean, great sage Zhujian's strength was much stronger than when he was in the outside world. However, Songtian Daojian was also helping from the side, so great sage Zhujian could not do anything to him. Shi Tianhao and Songtian Daojian did not have it easy either. Great sage Zhujian's turbid wave demon arrow was too insidious. Although it was not to the extent of certain death, one would instantly lose their ability to fight, and their injuries would be difficult to recover. Although Shi Tianhao had the origin divine light, he did not want to test it out easily. Every time great sage Zhujian shot an arrow, Shi Tianhao and Songtian Daojian would dodge it first. However, great sage Zhujian could not get close to the Star Sea Gate. His physical strength was strong, and the demon arrows were terrifying, but his defense was not his forte. Shi Tianhao's fierce attacks and Songtian Daojian's attacks were not something great sage Zhujian was willing to risk himself. Both sides were fighting. Great sage Zhujian's eyes were fixed on Shi Tianhao, and he could not wait to rush over and join forces with great sage Zhujian to kill Shi Tianhao to avenge his hatred. However, just as he was distracted, a pitch-black hand had already grabbed him. It was the palm of Wang Lin's great demon incarnation. Black air currents filled the void and enveloped great sage Zhujian's body. The great demon incarnation's face was exactly the same as Wang Lin's. There was no expression on its face, but it exuded an extremely evil aura. It was incomparably ferocious, even colder than when Wang Lin himself had reached the netherworld destruction realm. Wang Lin also knew that Shi Tianhao had killed the six-horned divine monkey king in the past. Now that he saw great sage Zhujian's appearance, how could he not know that he was going to cause trouble for Shi Tianhao? This made Wang Lin's killing intent rise in his heart. The cold and dangerous aura condensed into a solid form, and the demonic hand that covered the sky slashed toward great sage Zhujian's head. Great sage Zhujian had no choice but to turn his attention to Wang Lin first. He grinned and revealed his true form, a giant golden ape. He roared and rushed toward Wang Lin's great demon incarnation. Two giant palms, one black and one gold, collided fiercely in midair. Great sage Zhujian's body shrank and he was almost slapped to the ground. When Wang Lin had first obtained the great demon incarnation, he was not at a disadvantage in terms of physical strength when fighting great sage Lu Yuan, and Lu Yuan's physical strength was even stronger than great sage Zhujian's. Wang Lin's face was expressionless. This claw of his was created by referencing the Avicii divine claw of the primitive demon sect's secret martial arts technique and combining it with his own Xianmen Tianzong heavenly virtue scripture. Its power was even greater than the Avicii divine claw that he had used when fighting great sage Lu Yuan. The great demon incarnation's terrifying jet-black claw, which could pluck the stars and grab the moon, pinched the giant golden ape's claw in front of him and exerted force. The joints of great sage Zhujian's claw cracked, producing a sound like that of a star exploding. The claw of a great demon at the unity of the star and soul realm was about to be crushed by Wang Lin's great demon incarnation. Unlike the battle between Shi Tianhao and great sage Zhujian, which had caused Wang Lin to be at a disadvantage due to the geographical environment, Wang Lin's great demon incarnation was refined from the bodies of a Avicii demon statue and many heaven-bearing ants, fused with a large amount of magnetic force. Although it wasn't as powerful as the real demon race in the desolate ancient star ocean, it was still somewhat beneficial. It wouldn't be at a disadvantage due to the environment outside. Great sage Zhujian's face was full of anger, and he kept roaring. The 5 horns on his head shone with golden light. One of his horns was broken, and the essence of his blood qi and great Tao had been consumed. He wasn't at his peak. Otherwise, even if he couldn't defeat Wang Lin's great demon incarnation, he wouldn't be in such a sorry state. He let out an angry roar as he stared at Wang Lin. A golden ring of light appeared in one of his eyes and began to spin. As the ring of light spun, Wang Lin's huge great demon incarnation gradually shrank. The void around it distorted, as if it was about to spin as well. It was sucked into a vortex and pulled into the great sage Zhu Jian's eye. Wang Lin snorted coldly. A half-black, half-white demonic door appeared above his head and opened with a rumble. A complete world appeared. Many things had changed in the past, and the past couldn't be changed. But the present could be grasped, and the future was filled with countless possibilities. This was one of Wang Lin's 4 symbols: world magic, the ancient and present world. As the door closed, a power that grasped the countless possibilities of the present and future appeared. It was as if it wanted to change the past. Under the suppression of the ancient and present world, it instantly resisted the great sage Zhu Jian's magical arts. Although the great demon incarnation was only a martial arts clone, it could still use all of Wang Lin's magical arts. Although its power was inferior to that of the real Wang Lin, it could still be used wonderfully if used correctly. The great demon incarnation was so powerful that it wasn't easy for the great sage Zhu Jian to capture it. Now that it was suppressed by the ancient and present world, the ring of light could no longer distort space and time. The great demon incarnation's figure stabilized. However, the great sage Zhu Jian took this opportunity to forcibly break free from Wang Lin's netherworld sky-covering claw. Then, instead of retreating, he advanced. Not only did he not retreat, but he also took the initiative to attack. With a fierce roar, one of the 5 horns on the great sage Zhu Jian's head snapped off. Starlight shone on his body. The star refined by the great sage Zhu Jian fused with the broken horn, turning into a terrifying beam of golden light that slashed viciously at Wang Lin's great demon incarnation. The great demon incarnation expressionlessly raised an arm to block, but it was cut off at the elbow by the golden light. With great difficulty, the great sage Zhu Jian gained the upper hand. He leaped, shaking off Wang Lin's great demon incarnation, and rushed in the direction of Shitianhao. But just as he moved, the great demon incarnation's severed arm exploded, turning into thousands of giant ants that pounced on the great demon incarnation. In the next moment, black light surged from the great demon incarnation's severed arm and condensed into a brand new arm, looking as good as new. The great demon incarnation looked at the great sage Zhu Jian expressionlessly. With a flash, he appeared in front of the great sage Zhu Jian again. He clenched his right hand into a fist and smashed it down on the great sage Zhu Jian's head. The vigorous fist will almost solidified. The 8 phenomena of heaven, earth, wind, thunder, water, fire, mountain, and lake appeared at the same time, combining with each other. They were constantly fusing with each other, and their power was growing at an almost endless speed. As they grew, they collapsed and disintegrated at the same time, growing to an incomparably terrifying level. The top martial path of the orthodox Shenmen Tianzong, the 8-trigram sky collapsing hammer. The 6-horned great sage's heart sank to the bottom. The aura of the great devil avatar in front of him was weaker than before, but he was also in a worse state than before. Most importantly, he had lost the initiative he had gained by cutting off his own horn. No matter how unwilling he was, the great demon incarnation could only stop. Otherwise, the great demon incarnation's punch might blow his head off. As he continued to contend with Wang Lin, the great sage Zhu Jian's anger grew. He threw his head back and let out a long, mournful howl. Suddenly, a long howl rang out in the distance. Beams of golden light flashed, but they did not rush toward the gate of Star Sea. Instead, they rushed in the direction of the little Kelowna world. They were 6-horned divine monkeys, roaring and rushing toward Yu Hongyan, Li Yuanfang, and the others outside the little Kelowna world. The great sage Zhu Jian was trying to distract Lin Feng, Wang Lin, and the others. At the same time, the heavenly wolf sage, the Qiongqi sage, and the other great demons also threw their heads back and howled. Huge blood-eyed black wolves, Qiongqi, and golden-winged rocks appeared in the distant starry sky. They formed groups and rushed toward the little Kelowna world. Chapter 984. A group of demon race suddenly appeared in the distance. They were unable to intervene in the battle at the gate of Star Sea, so they turned to attack the direction of the little Kelowna world. Wang Lin's great demon doppelganger finally showed some expression. He frowned slightly, and his gaze became colder. Black light flashed on his body. This doppelganger of his was not only powerful, but because it had smelted many carrying ants, it could also split into thousands of units. It could gather and disperse at will. Tens of thousands of Dao soldiers combined into one body, and it could scatter tens of thousands of soldiers. Although splitting out a portion of the carrying ants would weaken the great demon doppelganger's own strength, it could be used to stop the demon race charging towards the little Kelowna world. Third junior brother, don't worry. Zhu Yi's Hao Yang doppelganger did not even turn his head. He continued to focus on stabilizing the passage into the little Kelowna world. Seeing that Wang Lin was about to split out the carrying ants, he immediately transmitted his voice to him. Wang Lin's eyes flickered slightly. He saw that Yu Hongyan and Luo Qingwu had already rushed forward and were fighting with the demon race. And from the moment Lin Feng and the others started fighting with the Heavenly Wolf Great Sage and the others, Li Yuanfang had already started to set up layers of arrays outside the entrance of the little Kelowna world, and was ready to fight. Facing the enemies pouncing towards him, Li Yuanfang's gaze swept across, and he already knew everything. A primordial true spirit six-horned divine monkey, an undying demon soul realm blood-eyed black wolf, and the rest are also demon king realm. He gently clasped his hands together, and shouted in a low voice, "Open!" 3 enormous array diagrams suddenly lit up dazzlingly outside the entrance of the little Kelowna world. They stacked together like a 3-story pagoda. The topmost formation was almost colorless and transparent. The wind whistled within it. It was the 9 heavens astral wind formation that broke through the void to receive the 9 heavens formless astral wind. In the middle layer, there was a mysterious and complicated formation. Thousands of grains of sand spread out. Each sand was black in color, but they were all flashing with a layer of white light. It was a magnificent scene. It was the light dust formation that Li Yuanfang had set up to open the eastern heavenly gate of the river and Luo heavenly gate formation. On the lowest level, there was a spell formation that flashed with pitch-black light. It looked ordinary and did not have any power, but one could faintly hear the whistling sound of wind. This was the Black Sea Immortal Trap Array that Li Yuanfang had set up to open the western heavenly gate. Li Yuanfang pushed his closed palms forward, and the 3 arrays gathered together. They actually began to gradually merge. The 9 heavens astral wind formation at the top kept sinking and disappeared into the light dust formation. However, the whistling sound of wind still remained. Slowly, the light dust formation that had engulfed the 9 heavens astral wind formation sank into the Black Sea Immortal Trap Array at the bottom. Then, there was no more movement. The Black Sea Immortal Trap Array was still silent, but the dangerous aura within it was getting stronger. Just this scene alone caused the demons that were charging up to shudder slightly. At their cultivation level, even if they were not good at formations, they still had the most basic eyesight. Formations had extremely high requirements for precision. If they were disturbed during the formation, it was very likely that all their previous efforts would be wasted. Adding an extra spirit talisman, an extra formation pattern, or a lack of formation pattern could cause trouble. However, Li Yuanfang's Black Sea Immortal Trap Array had an additional light dust formation that was not inferior in terms of complexity. What was even more shocking was that there was also a 9 heavens astral wind formation inside the light dust formation. The 3 arrays overlapped each other. Not only did they not collapse due to interference, their ferocity was even more terrifying. It was obvious that they were strengthening each other. This made Great Sage Duanqi, who was at the primordial true spirit realm of the 6-horned divine monkey clan, frown slightly. It was difficult to set up a formation. There were many restrictions, and it required a lot of time and material resources. However, when the formation was completed and began to play its role, it was never to be underestimated. Not to mention that Li Yuanfang had set up an array within an array, and the 3 arrays were linked into one. Even Zhu Yi's Hao Yang clone nodded repeatedly when he saw this. After 6th junior brother advanced to the middle stage of Yuanyin, his strength has gone up another level. In a sense, formation cultivators and martial cultivators of similar strength were each other's nemesis. When the distance was close enough, if the martial cultivator suddenly launched an attack and engaged in close combat, if the formation cultivator did not have a powerful protective treasure, it was possible that he would be severely injured or even killed in an instant. Therefore, when Li Yuanfang was still at the beginning of the foundation establishment stage, Lin Feng gave him the Golden Elixir Period embroidered belt. One of the main functions of the Golden Elixir Period artifact was to use it for defense. Later, after Li Yuanfang reached the core formation stage, Li Yuanfang was given the Yuanying Period artifact, the Blue Sky Thunder Bead, to deal with the problem of Li Yuanfang's lack of offensive ability. Today, these two artifacts were basically useless to Li Yuanfang, and they had already been given to Tan Yunqing as an inheritance artifact. But at the end of the day, when Li Yuanfang faced pure martial cultivators or demons with strong physical strength, he still had to be careful. In a situation where his own formation was not properly set up and prepared, once he was attacked, the consequences would be unimaginable. But on the other hand, if the formation cultivator was allowed to prepare in advance and be on guard, martial cultivators of similar strength were likely to be tortured to death. The characteristic of a martial cultivator that needed to be in close combat would be infinitely turned into a weakness. For example, now that Li Yuanfang had set up the formation in advance, he was already fully prepared. Even great sage Duanqi, who was at the primordial true spirit stage, felt a little headache. In particular, the six-horned divine monkey clan's ability to sense danger was extremely strong. He could vaguely sense that in the seemingly calm Black Sea immortal trap formation, there seemed to be a hidden treasure that complemented the formation and increased the power of both. In fact, even so, great sage Duanqi was not afraid at all. After all, the difference in cultivation between the two sides was too great. But what he was worried about was Zhu Yi's Hao Yang clone. Although Zhu Yi's Hao Yang clone was quite arrogant and did not respond to the pressure of the army, but only focused on stabilizing the entrance to the Little Kelowna world. But now that the entrance was covered by the Black Sea immortal trap formation, it was impossible to see what was inside. Who knew if Zhu Yi's Hao Yang clone was quietly hiding in the formation, ready to attack at any time? But at this moment, the arrow was already knocked on the bowstring and had to be released. Their clan leader was fighting fiercely with Wang Lin and the others, and it was difficult to determine the outcome for a while. They needed to win on their side and break the stalemate. The six-horned divine monkey king that Shi Tianhao had killed was also a blood relative of great sage Duanqi, not just of the same clan. With an angry roar, great sage Duanqi had already rushed into the Black Sea immortal trap formation. At the same time, great sage Shui Main, who led the blood-eyed Black Wolf clan here, also swept up a billowing blood mist and rushed into the formation. The six-horned divine monkey and blood-eyed Black Wolf followed closely behind and entered the formation. Although the golden-winged roc was not led by a great sage of the demon clan, it also turned into rays of golden light and rushed into the formation. As soon as they entered the formation, the group of great demons of the Demon King realm felt dizzy and almost lost consciousness. They only felt darkness in front of them, no sound in their ears, and no smell in their mouths and noses. More importantly, their thoughts became sluggish and almost could not operate. But in fact, around their bodies, waves of sharp astral winds had already attacked. Great sage Duanqi and Shui Main were also affected, but their magical powers and demonic powers were much stronger. They roared in unison and dispersed the black tornadoes around them like nightmares, and even helped their clansmen block many of the 9 heavens' formless astral winds. The group of demons calmed down and continued to rush into the formation. Great sage Duanqi was expressionless. He revealed his true form and suddenly stretched out his claws, grabbed a sharp horn on his head, and broke it. Roar! Great sage Duanqi exerted force in his claws, and the broken horn turned into rays of golden light. Then, it flickered continuously in the Black Sea immortal trap formation, intertwining with the black tornadoes. Great sage Duanqi's eyes lit up and shone into the void in front of him. Li Yuanfang's formation suddenly began to shake. But at this moment, relying on the formation that Li Yuanfang had set up, two figures directly rushed out of the formation, targeting the group of demons. They were Yu Hongyan and Luo Qingwu. The 7 kills star armor on Yu Hongyan's body flickered with purple light. Wanton and crazy murderous intent and viciousness were all poured into the army destroyer Imperial halberd in his hand. In the dark blue halberd, the destructive power that could destroy and destroy everything merged with the murderous intent of the 7 kill star armor that had been condensed to the extreme, forming a violent power that made all the ferocious demons tremble in fear, sweeping away thousands of troops. At this moment, the 7 kill star and the army destroyer Imperial halberd in the desolate ancient starry sea were constantly flashing, and their power was continuously added to the 2 magic treasures, as well as to Yu Hongyan. The astral winds of the 4 divisions' divine spear of heaven was displayed. Among the demons present, except for great sage Duanqi and Shui Main, most of the other demon kings were injured or killed with just a touch. The enhancement of the desolate ancient starry sea to Yu Hongyan's power was even greater than that of the demon kings who had not yet achieved the immortal demon soul. On the other side, Luo Qingwu waved her hand, and the pitch-black and cold profound clarity sword fell into her jade-white palm. As she gently waved it, the void suddenly resounded with the sound of landslides and tsunamis. An endless black ocean appeared in front of the demons, turned into roaring black waves, and rushed toward them. The seawater was endless and bone-piercingly cold, as if it could swallow all light. It was the most coldest and darkest of all, exactly the same as the seawater of the Yinyang Sea under Yujing Mountain. However, Luo Qingwu did not bring the water of the Yinyang Sea here, but it was formed by her own magic power. The blade of the profound clarity sword moved, and the violent black waves suddenly condensed. The most coldest and darkest of seawater instantly turned into countless huge black ice swords. The tips of the swords were as big as small mountains, emitting a cold sword aura, and slashed toward the group of demons. Luo Qingwu's 9 vast ocean sword of the Great Four Quadrants immortal slaying sword shone with a cold light. Because of her own physique, this sword was even more powerful than her sword of wind of shapeless sword. Seeing his own kind of blood-eyed black wolves dying in the hands of Yu Hongyan and Luo Qingwu, Blood Mane Great Sage let out a shrill howl, and the blood-red light around his body surged. He rushed forward, and his scarlet eyes were filled with greed and anger. He stared at the 2 girls and said, "You 2 are really good cauldrons." He let out a long howl, "Boys, take them down, and all of you will have a share." The violent howls of the wolves rose and fell, and all the blood-eyed black wolves raised a tsunami-like blood-red wave, pressing down on Yu Hongyan and Luo Qingwu. Chapter 985. The blood-eyed black wolves were one of the branches of the pure-blooded celestial wolves. They had a bad reputation in the great heaven primordial world. Apart from being bloodthirsty and cruel, they were also lecherous and full of aggression. She had been restrained by the heavenly enchantress Great Sage, but that did not change her nature. Although she knew this, Yu Hongyan's almond-shaped eyes widened as she faced the pack of wolves pouncing on her. Her blood-red sword-like eyebrows suddenly straightened, and her killing intent surged. The army vanquisher halberd in her hand drew an arc in the void, and in the next moment, it stabbed out like a bolt of lightning. Its speed was unbelievable, and it had already pierced through the Black Wolf King at the front. Yu Hongyan used the starry lightning spear, and each spear was faster than the last. She killed 2 Black Wolf Kings in a row. At this time, Blood Mane Demon Sage was already in front of her, and he opened his bloody mouth to bite down on her head. Looking at Blood Mane Demon Sage, Yu Hongyan raised her eyebrows, and the anger in her eyes burned even brighter. She changed the starry lightning spear to the thunderbolt spear, and without dodging, she stabbed the spear towards Blood Mane Demon Sage's open mouth. The greenish-black light gathered the majestic power of thunder and lightning and condensed into a thick sky-splitting halberd. If the halberd hit its target, even great Saint Shui Peng's hill-sized head would be smashed to pieces. These two magical treasures of yours can actually refine the power of the Seven Murders Star and the Army Vanquisher Star respectively. If they are devoured and refined, it will be of great benefit to us." Bloodmane Demon Sage let out a long howl, and suddenly turned his neck to avoid Yu Hongyan's spear. His teeth pounced from the side, and he bit the Army Vanquisher halberd. The Army Vanquisher halberd flashed with black light, and thunder exploded. As the spear continued to stab forward, it violently rubbed against Bloodmane Demon Sage's teeth, and electric snakes danced wildly in the air. Holding the spear, Yu Hongyan exhaled and shouted, "Huh!" Her chi and blood surged, and the sound of her blood surging in her veins was like a tsunami. Compared to Shuemane Great Sage, Yu Hongyan's disproportionately small body erupted with an astonishing power like a volcanic eruption. He swung his arms with all his might and directly swung Shuemane Great Sage's mountain-like body upwards like an ant moving a mountain. The halberd shook, and Bloodmane Demon Sage's huge body swayed in the air. The huge force made Bloodmane Demon Sage's teeth ache, and he almost let go. Bloodmane Demon Sage's body? Bloodmane Great Sage was also slightly startled. He did not dare to be careless. The black mane that looked like steel needles all over his body stood up, and a thick blood mist spurted out from them, turning into a sticky sea of blood. The 7 Killstar armor on Yu Hongyan's body glowed brighter, and he did not dare to be careless. Rays of purple light, like sharp blades, slashed out in all directions, and turned into a viscous sea of blood. The 7 Killstar armor on Yu Hongyan's body glowed brighter, and rays of purple light were like sharp blades that slashed out in all directions, cutting through the attacking spirits. At this time, Li Yuanfang also activated the array. Black tornadoes and condensed 9 heavens phaseless astral gale attacked Bloodmane Demon Sage. The black tornadoes suppressed his psyche, and the 9 heavens phaseless astral gale slashed at his body. In the void, a rusty ancient brass bell loomed in the black tornadoes, ringing indistinctly. It was Li Yuanfang's soul-subduing bell. Li Yuanfang had yet to form his nascent divinity, so the soul-subduing bell's power could not be fully unleashed. However, it complemented the Black Sea Immortal Trapping Array, and its power was extraordinary. Bloodmane Demon Sage was not the only one affected. The other blood-eyed black wolves around him were also dizzy, and their spirits were unstable. The same was true for the 6-horned monkey and golden-winged roc. In such an environment, the golden-winged roc's extreme speed could not be fully unleashed. However, as Li Yuanfang focused all his attention on Bloodmane Demon Sage, Duan Qi had an easier time. The golden light stirred the wind and rain, constantly shaking up Li Yuanfang's array. Li Yuanfang sat in the array, his expression cold. His hands were constantly changing hand seals, activating the array and the soul-subduing bell as he stared at Bloodmane Demon Sage. Zhu Yi's Hao Yang doppelganger was still opening the entrance to the little Kelowna world. At this time, he also turned around and looked coldly at Bloodmane Demon Sage and Duan Qi inside the array. He stretched out a hand and made a hand seal. An azure dragon shadow appeared in the void, letting out a mighty dragon roar, and coiled around Li Yuanfang's body. With the help of Zhu Yi's dragon ascension technique, Li Yuanfang's head immediately surged with spiritual energy. Gradually, an indistinct giant with 4 faces and 8 arms appeared, looking extremely mighty. As soon as this giant shadow appeared, the power of Li Yuanfang's array became stronger. Luo Qingwu was slightly stunned when she heard Bloodmane Demon Sage's words. Then, a funny expression appeared on her face. Heh! Instead, she took a step back. With a thought, a figure appeared next to her. It was a doppelganger that looked exactly like her. The waves of divine sense, aura of magic power, and appearance were exactly the same. The only difference was that the cultivation base was lower by a small realm, which was the early Yuanning realm. Luo Qingwu raised her hand, and the Xianqie sword fell into the hands of her Yin spirit doppelganger. The Yin spirit doppelganger shared her thoughts, and immediately stepped forward with the sword and attacked the group of demons with the 9 Yin vast ocean sword. As the Yin spirit doppelganger's Xianqie sword guided the violent Black Sea, a dim icy blue sword light lit up, and a pale white brilliance appeared in the Black Sea. The rolling waves suddenly stopped and froze into ice. However, it was not a black glacier, but a pale white glacier. After the 9-in vast ocean sword, Luo Qingwu immediately changed her sword momentum to the 10 Earth's absolute in sword. The glacier turned into a huge and cold ice sword that swept across the whole area. The group of demons was forced to retreat. Those who could not dodge in time were directly frozen into ice crystals, and in the next moment, they turned into dust and disappeared. Luo Qingwu's real self stood at the back, staring at blood-maned demon sage who was fighting with Yu Hongyan. She had a faint smile on her face, which unexpectedly looked a little similar to her master, Lin Feng. She raised her right hand, and a thick bamboo stick appeared in the air. The emerald-green bamboo stick was faintly flickering with fire. With a wave of Luo Qingwu's hand, the size of the bamboo stick began to shrink. In the end, it became less than a foot long. When it fell into Luo Qingwu's hand, it looked a little like a sword hilt, except that it didn't have things like a sword body, blade, or chin. Luo Qingwu held the bamboo fire staff of 7 treasures in her right hand, and pointed one end in the direction of blood-maned demon sage. Her left hand pinched a sword sign. Quick! At the tip of the bamboo fire staff of 7 treasures, a flame suddenly flashed, and a huge green flame appeared. It was one of the 7 great true fires in the world, Xidigarba True Brilliance. The green flame rapidly condensed at the tip of the bamboo fire staff of 7 treasures, and continuously compressed. The throbbing green flames were no longer as active as before. Instead, they seemed to have solidified. From movement to stillness, it was as thick and heavy as the green earth. It was the strongest form of Xidigarba True Brilliance. It was the manifestation of extreme condensation. Under Luo Qingwu's control, the thick and heavy Xidigarba True Brilliance gradually turned into the shape of a sword edge, but this sword edge was only a foot long. Luo Qingwu held the bamboo fire staff of 7 treasures, and the green flame sword at the tip of the staff, as if she was holding a short sword that was a foot long. But immediately after, the tip of this green flame sword flashed with different colors, but it was the milky white pure yang true fire. This milky white pure yang true fire continuously condensed at the tip of the sword edge formed by Xidigarba True Brilliance, and then extended forward, wearing down the green sword edge of Xidigarba True Brilliance. Then, it also condensed into a sword edge that was a foot long. The flame sword in Luo Qingwu's hand became 2 feet long. The back half was green, and the front half was milky white, with a clear distinction between them. Next, the pure gold pure yang true fire also burned, turning into the 3rd sword edge. The dazzling sun divine light continued to condense and compress, finally turning into a pure gold, almost transparent pure sword edge. The first 3 feet of the sword edge condensed quickly, while the 4th sword edge condensed by Nanmingli fire condensed very slowly. It condensed inch by inch, minute by minute, and even condensed bit by bit. Although slow, it was unwavering and finally formed. Green, milky white, pure gold, with red and blue flashing amidst the golden light, Luo Qingwu used the bamboo fire staff of 7 treasures as the hilt, and the 4 great true fires as the sword edge. The sword tip pointed straight at Xuepu Sage. Even with the bamboo fire staff of 7 treasures, a sword edge of 4 feet is still very difficult. Luo Qingwu smiled. Then, with a wave of her right hand, she raised the flaming sword in her hand. In the dark void, the sword swayed with a long flame tail, and slashed at Xuepu Sage. That terrifying aura made even Xuepu Sage, a great demon with an indestructible demon soul, narrow his eyes, and change his expression. Luo Qingwu's 7 flaming sky-raising sword of the great 4 elephants immortal slaying swordsmanship, one sword with 7 divine blades. Using the sword to control the fire, as the sword edge was unsheathed, 1 foot at a time. Although it was not as powerful as Xiao Yan's celestial flaming lotus, the power of the sword was still extremely terrifying, especially when Luo Qingwu used the bamboo fire staff of 7 treasures to store the true fire. When she controlled the true fire, she also activated the power of this magical treasure. Under such circumstances, Although she was only at the Yuanying stage, the power of the bamboo fire staff of 7 treasures could be exerted to an astonishing level. It was as if a nascent divinity cultivator was controlling it, and it could exert its full power. It was not as flexible as the shapeless sword of wind, nor was it as powerful as the sword of 9 in vast ocean, but its pure lethality and explosive power were Luo Qingwu's current strongest killer move. Xue Pu Sage wanted to retreat, but the power of Yu Hongyan's spear edge was getting stronger and stronger, and the terrifying killing intent pressed back at him like an avalanche. At the same time, Li Yuanfang's suppressive power of the formation was activated to the extreme, restricting Xue Pu Sage's demon soul and making it difficult for him to move. The 4-foot-long sky-raising sword of 7 flaming sky-raising sword fell. Xue Pu Sage could only barely twist his waist to avoid being hit, but his hind legs were still cut by the sword edge. The 4-foot-long sword edge was not even a strand of hair compared to Xue Pu Sage's huge body, but when it reached him, it exploded with a loud bang. Green, milky white, needle-like pure gold, and flashing red and blue gold, raging flames rose one after another, bringing with them a destructive power. Driven by the sharp sword will, they turned into a giant sword that cut off Xue Pu Sage's hind legs and tail. The huge flesh and blood that were cut off was instantly burned into nothingness. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.